Mist clung to the shattered peninsula like a living shroud, silver threads twisting between basalt spires that had once been the beating heart of an empire. Long silent magma rivers coursed again in hidden veins, their glow painting the dawn, a murderous crimson. On the high ridge where City of the Winged Shadows had collapsed in the doom, Mary's Valyrian stood inside a ring of molten stone, eyes the color of drowned heliotrope fixed upon the newborn sun. She breathed in smoke thick with salt and copper, tasted the sulfur that tingled on her tongue, and listened to the music rising from the forges far below. The song was not wrought of hammers alone. Every anvil strike told in measured concord with the deep, thrumming chant of glass candles, rekindled in obsidian towers. Each note was a fragment of a spell begun 3 generations earlier, when desperates, dreamers, and lost scions of the 40 dragon lords had crept back to these ruins, with cracked scrolls and half-remembered incantations. Years had turned their faith into structure, structure into strength. With alchemical sands they mended roads that had liquefied in the doom's first fire. They fed raw ore to pale blue dragon flame, forging armor that shimmered like starlight and cut like silent judgment. Most spoke little, for speech itself seemed paltry beside creation's roar. Now, after a century hidden from the wider world, old Valyria opened its eyes. Steam burst skyward, where canals met boiling fissures, and the newborn streets ran slick with heat, but did not warp. Pyromancers from Quarth called it heresy. Maesters would have called it impossible. Mary's named it inevitability. She had been bred for this. Half driftwood princess of House Valerian, half shadow of forgotten Volantine magisters. Her will, they whispered, had coaxed the first egg to crack in Valerian Hall since Balerion the Black Dread flew from Dragonstone. Yet Mary's deemed herself only a hand guiding older purpose. Iranian stirs, rumbled a voice behind her. She did not turn. He circles the caldera impatiently. As do I. None. Archon Valerie stepped forward, white robe trailing ash, age-spotted hands hidden in voluminous sleeves. The younger beast is restless too. 3 wingspans now. He will outgrow the nursery tunnels within a moon. Then the day is upon us. A flick of sunlight caught in Mareza's silver-gold hair. The strands seemed flame themselves. The freehold is no longer a secret fortress. It must become a banner the whole world can see. Valerie's eyes, pink around the irises, glittered. Your council is gathered. The vote has already come. Unanimous, as predicted. Unanimous. The word felt weightless on her lips, though she had sacrificed nearly everything to bring them to it. Uniting the 9 surviving families, quelling the blood feuds that had outlived the doom by 200 years, binding them to a dream larger than any single house. Not conquest for conquest's sake, but restoration. Of knowledge, dominion, even the language of flame and sky. And yet, restoration required a proving ground. Across the narrow sea lay a continent of squabbling lords, still telling bedtime tales of dragons. Steel-shod footsteps approached. Aegon Waters, tall as the mast of his flagship and twice as flexible, his skin burnt copper by a lifetime at sea. Born a bastard in lies, raised among wreckers in the stepstones, he now wore the pale cloak of Valyrian command. Fleet is watered and provisioned, he said. 30 triremes, 26 dramans, 5 great carracks. Sailors call us the Tide of Fire. They will learn more fitting names soon enough, Mary's replied. She glanced east, where the smoking hills fell away to black glass beaches. Their Iranian wheeled, colossal, each beat of his wings stirring storms. The lesser hatchling, Valixi, trailed like an ember adrift in his wake. Flames rippled across their scales, amber for the elder, citrine for the younger. Against blood-red clouds they looked like living cuts in the sky. What word from the Watchers, she asked. Valaris produced a rolled parchment, sealed with Valyrian glyphs. 7 kingdoms still quarrel beneath a crippled king. The harvest fails in the reach for want of rain. Dorne plots its own games. The north bleeds coin shoring up the shattered wall, and the Iron Islands stir again. Men? So many wounds, Aegon mused. A single spear could burst them. Mary's gaze hardened. Not a spear. A dragon's talon. Far across the sea, in a red-roofed rookery overlooking the Blackwater's sluggish bend, Maester Willis Baratheon cracked the wax seal of the raven newly arrived from Lys. The letter was scribed in an ornate hand foreign to him, but dread is a language any man can read. He carried the scroll to Queen Regent Sansa Stark with trembling fingers. Sansa had grown accustomed to bad tidings. She wore them now as Catelyn had once worn her traveling cloak, an item necessary to preserve warmth against courts that grew colder by the day. The Iron Throne itself had become an empty symbol. From his tower of broken memory, King Bran advised seldom and reigned never. Sansa wielded law as best she could while the realm bristled, each lord certain his grievance outweighed his neighbors. What threat could outmatch the rancor of 7 kingdoms? She discovered it in the maester's steady recitation. Those who name themselves the restored freehold gather dragons and war fleets beneath banners unseen since Valyria drowned. Silence strangled the solar. Outside, the clatter of carpenters mending wildfire damage seemed suddenly distant, as though the air itself stepped back. "How many dragons?" Sansa asked. Willis' reply rasped in his throat. "1, possibly 2 full-grown, my lady, and eggs hatching." She dismissed him with a nod and a faint smile that never reached her eyes. When he left, she pressed knuckles to lips, as though to hold her thoughts inside. Dragons again, real, not rumor. And not leashed by Targaryen flesh that Westeros had once hailed and feared in equal measure, but by strangers who owed the 7 nothing. She sought counsel in the Red Keep's Godswood after dusk. Beneath the heart tree's gnarled visage Bran sat in his wheeled chair, eyes like pale autumn sky drifting unfocused across the moss. He listened without blinking as she spoke of resurgent Valyria. At last he said, "Fire returns to its cradle. Water will not quench it this time." "Then do you see the path?" "1,000. All burning." Bran sighed. "I smell ash already on the wind." Sansa's heart tightened. "Then we must gather every sword." "Swords will help," he murmured. "But knowledge may matter more. Seek the forgotten places, where dragons first bowed to man, where stone yet remembers blood." She knelt, clasped his thin hands. "You are king. Give me a command, and I will obey." Bran's gaze slid beyond her, into distances unmapped by mortal cartographers. "Prepare for a war of beginnings. 3 days sail north of Sunspear. Dark sails cut a moonless sky." Aegon Waters paced the deck of the Argent Tide as wind whipped his cloak, the taste of summer sea brine over his beard. Behind him, columns of firelight rose from each vessel's brazier, reflecting off armored oarsmen bent to their task. The fleet moved like a single creature, each hull a scale on its sinuous length. Above, Iranian and Valyria soared silent. Dragons needed no sleep as men did. They rode thermals, eyes aglow, casting passing shadows on the swollen sails. Storm's End lay ahead, ancient fortress perched upon a cliff hammered by tempests. Lords of the Stormlands boasted that no army had ever taken it by land or sea. History, Aegon thought, concerned itself little with dragons. When dawn broke, Iranian's first roar shattered gull cries, and Valyria answered with a shriek of infant fury. The outer curtain wall melted before soldiers inside even grasped the threat. Viscous stone ran in rivulets, hissing where it met surf. Arrow slits dribbled molten glass, their archers consumed in moments. The gatehouse collapsed, portcullis falling inward like the ribcage of a dying beast. Those knights who charged forth brandishing swords found themselves stepping onto a plain of blackened sand that had been their courtyard heartbeat earlier. They faced spearmen in armor etched with coiling worms, Valyrian infantry, disciplined, silent, behind mirrored helms. The bastion fell before midday. Word of the slaughter traveled on panic wings up the Roserad and north through Crow's Nest and Fellwood. By the time it reached King's Landing, Aegon Waters' fleet had already anchored beneath the broken towers of Tarth, refilling casks with sweet spring water and gathering thralls, masons, healers, children whose mothers screamed in accents unfamiliar to Valyrian ears. Aegon allowed no pillage beyond need. He could be merciful as weather, or cruel as the sea's pitiless floor. His orders were clear. Resources sustain conquest. Vengeance wastes it. Sir Garland Tyrell, once the knight of flowers grown broader with age, knelt before the high garden weir at sunset. Petals drifted upon the mander like bruised dreams, and the wind carried smoke that tasted of ruin. Garland had ridden hard from Brightwater Keep, escorting half a score of ragged bannermen who claimed Dragonflame had erased Bitterbridge from the map. Seasoned veterans wept, describing fires that flowed like water. Soldiers burned alive inside tin armor. The Lady of Highgarden, now Queen Margaery by marriage to Lord Protector Willis, received him in a courtyard overgrown with jasmine. Her hair, darker and strewn with silver, framed eyes still sharp enough to slice truth from rumor. Garland delivered dire news in blunt language, omitting nothing. When he finished, Margaery touched the petals at her feet. Targaryen rule began with dragons, she said softly. Now dragons return to end what's left. We can rally the Reach, Garland offered. Call every banner from Old Oak to Cockleswent, with enough bowmen. No arrow can pierce skyfire, she interrupted gently. Nor can spears hold walls that melt. Garland clenched fist against breastplate. We must still fight. Even gods cannot save us if we cower. A faint smile. Then fight we shall. But we will choose ground dragons' fear. Then no. He frowned until comprehension dawned, and dread with it. There were places dragons feared indeed. Wetlands that smothered flame, rugged crags where wings found no purchase, or caverns deep beneath bones of dead mountains where heat turned back upon itself. Yet to lure a dragon there meant sacrificing towns in its path. Strategy would cost blood measured in villages. Margaery saw the turmoil crossing his face. She placed a hand on his steel-clad arm. Heroes live in songs, brother. We must settle for duty. Then Marys watched the first prisoners arrive in Valyrian longboats. Stormlander captains, a maester from Griffin's Roost, half a dozen green boys who had thrown spears at Iranian from trembling hands. They knelt on sun-baked basalt before her throne, once a dais of fractured obsidian now fused into a smooth seat veined with quartz. You fear what you do not understand, she told them in Valyrian so pure, it stabbed the ears. A translator echoed her words in common, hesitant. You have seen the might and mercy of the restored freehold. Choose. Bind yourselves to our cause, or return to your gods as ash. Then so. One captain hawked phlegm at her sandals. Velixi landed beside him in a hail of sparks, still small enough to touch wingtip to throne, yet his presence bent every spine. The captain's defiance wavered, then shattered. He bowed, palms scraped raw on volcanic glass. Good, Marys whispered, stroking the hatchling's horned brow. Loyalty is forged in the same fire as fear. But loyalty quenched too quickly will break. She signaled Valyries. The Archon led the first group away, to serve in smithies, in libraries, to nurse wounded Valyrian soldiers. None were harmed. The second group, those who hesitated, she condemned to toil rebuilding the shattered causeways under the watch of silent colossi. She executed none, yet rumor would paint darker portraits, and rumor served her as sharp as steel. Night fell with twin moons glimmering through sulfur haze. Marys climbed the highest tower alone, where heat warped air into ghostly serpents. There she communed with the glass candles, slender pillars humming like hearts. Thoughts stretched across black waters, brushing distant minds. She felt the pulse of Sansa Stark's fear, the cold determination of Margaery Tyrell, the unfurling curiosity of Bran beneath the weirwood's bough. All roads danced as spider silk before her mental sight, converging toward collision. A splash of wind parted flame. Iranian alighted on the tower's wide perch, colossal wings folding with the sigh of collapsing storms. His golden eyes reflected every flicker of candlelight, making him appear wreathed in suns. Marys laid her forehead against his scaly muzzle, felt ancient power vibrating through bone and blood, as though the beast were less creature than conduit to forces older than tides. Soon, she whispered in Valyrian, and he rumbled agreement. At the wall's charred remnants, Jon Snow found ghosts returning. Ravens perched upon scorched gateposts. silent testimony to oaths broken by time. He had come north with a handful of wildlings and Night's Watch survivors, sent by Sansa to gauge readiness should the invaders reach even here. Snow had never feared fire. He had slept beside a dragon's furnace-hot breath. Yet watching fresh reports carried by hard-riding couriers, castles turned to slag, fields as glass, he felt heat in his marrow colder than northern ice. Tormund Giantsbane spat at the ground. Southron fools will burn their own beds before yielding them. We fight or we freeze. It's the same dance, Crow. Jon shook his head. This flame isn't the one we know. It bends to will like a sword. If the new Dragon Lords master sorcery of old Valyria, they may breach truths we never dreamed. His gaze lifted beyond the tattered horizon, toward a dawn-tinted lurid orange by far-off plumes. We will need allies forgotten, even by legends. He thought of the children of the forest, of hidden caves where roots whispered secrets to stones. He thought of the ice dragons some skalds swore still slept beneath the shivering sea. Bran had once spoken of depths in the earth where white fire coiled, neither flame nor frost, but something nameless. Perhaps only that could stand against wildfire made flesh. A horn blast echoed, mournful. He turned. A party rode through drifting snow, gray cloaks trimmed in rabbit fur. Sigil of a pale spider on black field. The White Harbor men bore tidings. Their fleet had sighted strange coffers, afloat off Skagos, each a bronze cage holding living flame that never dimmed despite sea spray. Gifts left by unseen hands. Heralds of a power that mocked distance. Jon's jaw tightened. War of beginnings indeed. The Blackwater Rush lay glass smooth beneath a full moon when Valyrian scouts first crept up its banks. They moved soundless. Slender blades of pale steel strapped across backs, eyes shielded behind lacquered masks. They counted torches on battlements, marked trebuchet positions rebuilt after Cersei's folly, traced patrol routes along wharfs. One paused to touch a stone still scarred by the wildfire explosion years earlier, feeling sister flames stirring within as though the wall itself remembered. Before dawn, Aegon Waters anchored a dozen fireships in the bay, sails furled. At first light their decks erupted with sheets of blue-white fire that did not consume wood. The spectacle drew fishermen and dockhands to rails, gawking. Word raced to the Red Keep. Sansa watched from the Tower of the Hand, cheeks stung by early breeze. The invaders announced themselves not with bombs, but with fear. She saw, too, that the fleet beyond the gimmick was formidable. Hulls built of dark teak sheathing hulls, plated in articulated bronze. A page delivered Bran's message penned in spidery hand. They will strike soft places first. Hearts, hopes, mirrors. Hold your nerve. She summoned gold cloaks, red wine galleys, archers from the Vale. She ordered bells silent. Fear fed on tumult, therefore she would starve it. When sun climbed halfway, a single skiff rowed toward the city, a white banner flapping. A man rose, his copper skin gleaming, beard bound with silver rings. He bore no weapon visible. Trumpets called him to the mud gate. There, Sansa stood flanked by Sir Davos Seaworth and Brienne of Tarth, each armored for war. I am Aegon Waters, voice of the restored freehold, he said, bowing. My queen offers fellowship to worthy realms. Fellowship purchased with ruin? Davos muttered. Aegon smiled warmly. With peace. Resistance gave storms and naught but ashes. Bend the knee, and your people may share in gifts old Valyria will bestow. Healing arts, metal that never dulls. Seeds that grow in salt. He spread arms. Imagine a market where famine dies. Sansa met his gaze. Peace delivered upon Dragonback is not peace. It is fear by another name. A name spoken in every age, Aegon answered. Better fear that builds monuments than pride that buries bones. She offered him wine still warm from furnace, but he declined politely. Negotiations proceeded until sunset, each phrase gloved yet edged. He never threatened directly, only remarked upon fragility of stone against flame. At last, with a courteous smile, he said, The offer stands until moonset tomorrow." When he left, Sansa exhaled the breath she'd held all day. "He thinks I will break inside 24 hours. Will you?" Brienne asked. Her lips twitched. "Starks do not yield to winter. We will not yield to fire." A whisper drifted across Braavos. Glass candles shine over the smoking sea, and their light reaches even Titan's eyes. In Pentos, magisters recounted dreams of crimson serpents devouring stars. In Volantis, the red priests who preached of Azor Ahai saw visions of a woman in silver, forging a blade from daylight. Some cried it meant salvation, others, apocalypse. Merchants cast lots, wondering whether new trade routes would open or sink beneath black tide. Slavers hoped to sell armies to whichever king outbid the other. Warriors of the Second Sons argued whether to ride storm or shield against it. Farther south, Nymeria Sand, grown wild as her namesake wolf sister, led scouts along the Greenblood. She studied the ashes of Harvest Hall, where dragonfire had curled barns into charred question marks. Her eyes, dark pools of molten amber, held neither shock nor awe, only calculation. Dorne had resisted dragons before, when Princess Myrria turned desert into armor. If the Freehold thought to seize Sunspear as a stepping stone, they would taste sand in their lungs. Yet the desert had no walls, and sky cast no shadow. If Iranians' brood flew south, they could scour half a principality before noon. Nymeria sent vipers bearing messages to every hidden well and canyon pass. War would not wait for treaties. Deep in the heart of Valyria's reborn citadel, Marys knelt in a chamber lined with mirrors wrought from black diamond. Each pane reflected her face at different ages: infant swaddled in silk, girl with fire in her eyes, woman crowned in embers. The mirrors spoke in voices that were her own and not her own, telling histories that had never happened, futures that might. She asked them a single question: "How does a dream endure?" They answered in kaleidoscopic whispers: "Not by conquest alone, by the shaping of souls." She saw then that Westeros could be seized in months, yet lost in decades if fear did not temper into reverence. Dragons might enforce obedience, but only culture could cement legacy. Children born under Drake's shadow must see Valyria as destiny, not doom. So she penned decrees to deliver after King's Landing fell. Libraries rebuilt first, septons spared so long as they swore to teach Valyrian script alongside prayers, roads paved in fused stone to connect holdfasts, and taxes levied not in gold, but in grain to feed provinces still smoldering. As ink dried, Iranian roared outside, wings casting eclipse over the tower. Mary smiled, a queen's smile, half mercy, half promise. She would lay the realm low, then raise it higher than before, brick by burning brick. Night before the Freehold's deadline, Sansa walked the battlements. The city below slept uneasily. No revelry echoed from Flea Bottom. Even the rats seemed hushed. She paused where Blackwater Bay spread beneath starlight. At harbor mouth, a constellation of foreign lanterns bobbed. Aegon's fleet, patient, confident. Footsteps approached. Sir Podrick Payne, face leaner, eyes older. Ravens came from Old Town, Your Grace. Archmaesters work day and night for something. He hesitated. Say it. Spellfire, they called it. Counter to Dragonflame. She arched brow. And do they have it? They have theories. Wind carried faint screech of Valexian distance. Sansa closed eyes, pictured fire raining upon street, where Arya had once japed with vendors, upon tower where Tyrion had once stood defiant. If she surrendered, perhaps those stones would remain whole, yet each dawn would dawn under foreign banners. If she resisted, many would die. Choice between slow death and swift. Podrick's voice trembled. What would Lord Eddard do? She opened eyes. Father taught one truth above others. Honor cannot breathe under tyranny. If there is even a sliver of hope, we must hold it. She rested hand upon dagger hidden beneath cloak. The same cat's paw blade that changed kings and kingdoms. Steel felt cold, but resolve burned hotter. Send word to Garland Tyrell. Jon Snow, Nymeria Sand, strike the invaders where they are not looking. We will bleed them in 100 cuts. Podrick bowed. As you command. Moonset neared. Aegon Waters waited at the prow of his flagship, posture relaxed, yet eyes scanning ramparts for the banner of surrender he expected. Instead he saw a lonely lantern blink thrice atop the tower of the Hand. Signal of defiance. He sighed, half amused. So be it, he murmured, and lifted his arm. A flare soared into pre-dawn sky, igniting azure against waning stars. Iranian answered with a roar that cracked distant cliffs. Wings beat hurricane strong. Flames poured from his jaws, turning night to high noon as he dived. His shadow, a stain of moving night, swept across the city. Upon the walls, Sansa braced while Brienne held shield high. Catapults released hissing canisters of wildfire, not at the dragon but at the river, where flames spread atop water's skin, creating a barrier the beast must cross. Iranian met the jade wall head-on. For a heartbeat green fire clashed with gold, explosions painting clouds. Then the dragon burst through, scales smoking, yet undeterred. He banked over the tourney grounds and exhaled, stands vaporized, marble melted. The defenders loosed arrows dipped in obsidian oil. They pattered harmlessly off impervious scales. On the decks below, Aegon watched with measured detachment. Victory must be absolute, but not annihilating. His dragon's fury needed careful rein. At the Red Keep, Bran Stark rolled from his chamber. Ravens flooded through shattered shutters, landing upon twitching vines. Bran's eyes turned white as snowmelt. He reached through weir roots coiled beneath the keep, whispering to seeds buried before Aegon the Conqueror was born. Stone underfoot groaned. Iranian climbed for second strike, but faltered mid-arc. Wings juddering. Roots, thick as shipmasts, erupted from crenellations, lashing skyward, wrapping around talons scorched and bleeding. The dragon howled, twisting. Branches exuded, frosted sap that hissed on hot scales. Magic older than Valyria answered the call of a boy king in a broken body. Aegon cursed, signaled horns. Ballistae at river mouth fired harpoons forged of star steel, chains trailing. They struck roots, severing. Iranian freed himself with snap of wings, rose again. But bleeding. Flight, uneven. He retreated beyond range, roars, rumbling like distant thunder. Velixi darted behind, smaller flame, flickering, uncertain. Injury would heal, but myth of invincible superiority was cracked. Sansa watched the titanic silhouette fade into murk. She allowed herself one breath of relief before shouting orders to shore up fires. On the deck of the Argent Tide, Aegon dabbed fragrant salve on Iranian's lacerations. The beast tolerated it, though smoke still trickled from wounded hide. Mary's voice crackled through glass candle set upon crystal pedestal. Report. A moment's miscalculation, he admitted. They harness forces beyond Maester's lore, living roots wielded like chains. You sound intrigued, she observed. I admire any weapon born of desperation. He glanced toward hazy lights of city. Tomorrow, we finish this. The beast must rest, she cautioned. Push him too soon, you may undo all. Aegon's smile bore salt-white teeth. Patience. Dawn will bring options beyond flame. The candle dimmed. He turned to charts outlining sewer tunnels beneath King's Landing, traced by spies weeks earlier. Fire above, knives below. Even the proudest city could drown if its veins were cut. In the crypts beneath Winterfell, Jon Snow stood before Lyanna's statue, torchlight flickering across her stone smile. He felt ghosts heavier than usual, northern kings, silent behind granite eyes. He bowed head. I rode a dragon once. I may yet again, but not as ally. Help me. Bedivne. A wind rustled through the sealed corridor, snuffing flame for a breath, and in that hush he sensed ancient words. Ice does not bow to fire. It reshapes it. He recalled tales of ice dragons, their breath cold enough to freeze fire in midair. None had been seen in living memory, yet somewhere in the utter north. He straightened. Gilly, he called. The mother of Zam's child emerged holding infant, brows knitted. Jon explained swiftly. Gather scrolls on northern legends. Compile every scrap on frostworms. She looked at him as if sanity teetered, yet nodded. The dance of fire and ice was not merely song, it would become war's refrain. Valyria burned brighter than any sun the next night, rune-latticed furnaces pumping new alloys into molds shaped like leaping drakes. Marys oversaw production while archmages etched spells onto blades still glowing. She felt the wound of her dragon across their shared link, pain raw yet instructive. Opponents possess power outside her calculations, thus, adapt. She ordered the forging of chilled iron cores inside dragonglass shells. Spears meant to pierce enchanted roots. She read treatises captured from Citadel envoys, gleaned weaknesses. Raw magic channeled through heart trees could be disrupted by certain harmonics. Thus she commanded choristers trained by Volantine psalmists, their voices to weave countersongs beneath dragonflight. War reinvented itself with each breath. So would she. Sunrise flared blood orange across Blackwater. King's Landing's smoke-stained walls cast long shadows, but banners still snapped defiantly. From the bay came fresh drums, not war but rhythm of labor. Sansa peered through spyglass, saw Valyrian sailors constructing floating rafts piled with black barrels. Not wildfire, the color wrong. Something thicker. Slower. What mischief now? Davos muttered. Her answer came when a single arrow, fire-tipped, ignited the first raft. Magazine erupted in oily bloom, thick smoke coiling low across water, crawling inland. Men on docks coughed, eyes watering. A smell like tar and rotted eggs invaded streets. Sansa's stomach clenched. It's pitch, she realized. They mean to blind us. Wind shifted, drawing choking smog over battlements. Visibility shrank. From haze boomed horns, and through gaps materialized low craft, reinforced with iron rams. They glided almost silent, propelled by chained slaves rowing under deck. Ballista crews strained, but saw nothing until Hull struck piers, crushing pilings. Grappling hooks flew, and masked foot soldiers poured ashore. Silent killers wielding curved blades that glimmered like moon-touched glass. Brienne led charge to meet them beneath Gate of the Gods. Steel clashed, screams rose, but attackers moved with inhuman synchronicity, cutting cords of defense. For every one slain, two more climbed. In the Red Keep's belly, alchemists scrambled, mixing final batches of wildfire. One slip, one stray spark, and the city would finish what dragons started. Above the chaos, a low howl preceded Velix's swift dive. The young dragon belched fire down alleys where defenders rallied. Sowing chaos deeper. Yet he lacked Iranian's sheer might, and archers targeted wings with storm-fletched barbs soaked in resin. Two found purchase. He shrilled, pulling up before crashing into tower. On a rooftop near Flea Bottom, Arya Stark, no ghost in this tale, but a blade in darkness, watched embers swirl. She had returned unannounced weeks earlier, keeping to hidden tunnels. Now city needed every phantom. She loosed a signal bolt. Green flare arced, guiding small knots of brotherhood without banners to cut ropes of invading siege ladders. Every street became battleground, every citizen conscript. Rats fought hawks with kitchen knives. Septas sheltered children beneath marble angels, now cracked and weeping. Sansa, in the Tower of the Hand, held ground, issuing orders till ink-soaked cuffs. Still, the tide crept upward. If outer defenses fell, nothing but brick and will separated throne from flame. Miles south, near the ruins of Summerhall, Garland Tyrell's cavalry struck Valyrian scouting parties, severing supply wagons of obsidian bolts. Forests rang with screams of horses bleeding black, where poisoned quarrels hit. For each enemy slain, 3 fresh detachments replaced them as though Abyss itself birthed legions. Yet Garland pressed his advantage. Hit, fade, hit again, drawing freehold forces away from Heartland, while Sansa fought for breath. Night's dark returned over King's Landing. Flamelight flickered across bay where warships now anchored brazenly under walls. Aegon waters stood amid courtyards seized hours earlier. Dragon Pit, ironically, where last Targaryen dragons had died sickly and small. He contemplated ruins under new light. Perhaps he would rebuild it, greater, to house Iranian's progeny. Brienne's battered guard retreated inside city proper. Valyria's fires cut escape. At dawn, perhaps main gates would fall. Yet victory felt incomplete. The realm's heart might break, but its spirit, stubborn as mountains. Aegon craned neck skyward. Iranian returned, healed enough, wings whispering across rising smoke. He circled once, then roared. A note neither triumph nor warning but anticipation. Tomorrow he would end resistance. Above a silent field of shattered statues outside Mire, a lone raven bearing twin eyes, one black, one emerald, took flight westward. Bran watched through its vision. He had seen enough for now. Roots coiled through his veins, aching with exertion. Yet he would not relent. If dragons meant to burn history, the Greenseer would awaken deeper memories, the last shreds of magic men forgotten. In Valyria, Mary's closed the final clasp on armor wrought from new alloy, lighter than hide, strong as old legends. She stepped onto Iranian's saddle forged of fused bone and silver, and her voice echoed across parade grounds. Tomorrow we reshape a continent. Thousands of soldiers knelt, swords crossing before breastplates, answering in a single thunderous heartbeat. Iranian launched, tail lashing towers. Valyria followed, trill eager. Behind them rose two shapes newly matured. Shadows that had never known the doom, now hatched into a world starving for awe. 4 dragons soared east, blackening sun. The war of beginnings entered its second dawn. Wind gnawed at the walls of King's Landing, a hungry thing ripping tattered banners from their poles as dawn smeared pale copper across a sky thick with dragon smoke. Sansa Stark felt the tremor of the city beneath her boots. Mortar settling, stone groaning, the heartbeat of a million souls clenching at once. She had not slept. She could not. Every breath she allowed herself was borrowed against time she no longer possessed. Below the Tower of the Hand, the makeshift infirmary had overflowed hours earlier. Mothers cradled sons with limbs blackened by dragonfire. Septus knelt beside men whose skin cracked like baked clay. Maester Willis moved through the aisles with vials of dream wine already gone sour in the choking heat, eyes rimmed red from smoke and tears alike. Sansa paused only long enough to squeeze his shoulder, wordless gratitude, and pressed on. Outside, Brienne of Tarth and her dwindling company of Riverland knights hammered last iron braces across the mud gate. Every clang of the hammer echoed down the street, beating cadence to prayers whispered behind shuttered doors. Children who had never seen war clutched wooden toys scorched black at the edges, as if the flames had tried to claim even their dreams. Then, not the hush of exhaustion, but the unnerving stillness that settles before a storm tears the world apart. Even the gulls quieted. Sansa stood on the parapet and felt hair lift on the nape of her neck. Somewhere beyond the rising sun, something ancient stirred the air with thunderous wing beats. Shadows boiled above the bay, 4 great shapes eclipsing the light. Iranian led, bronze gold wings as wide as the Red Keep itself. Valyria followed, smaller but nimble, a streak of fire and impatience. Beside them flew twin rookies just matured, Morthrax, scales of smoked amethyst, and Orishan, green-black like the deep ocean at midnight. Their roars braided together, shaking banners along the street of steel. Archers braced, one line after another, but the dragons climbed beyond bowshot to circle, biting orders none below could hear. Only when Iranian dipped a wing did vessels hidden behind the city's blind side appear. Long ships dragged from black fog conjured overnight, their prows carved as open maws. One by one, they slipped past the chain boom, sunk halfway across the rush, rowing hard against current to beach high on muddy bank beneath River Row. Aegon Waters strode down the gangplank of the Argent Tide wearing his serpent-etched cuirass, no helm, hair wind-struck, and shining like wet copper. Valyrian infantry poured after him, shields overlapping, spears gleaming with frost-gray alloy, newly forged in the heartland for this moment. They advanced, step-click, toward the flea-infested alleys that would funnel them straight to the Great Sept's ruins, a yard of rubble wide enough for their ranks. Sansa watched them come, felt panic claw her ribs. The gold cloaks she still commanded could not hold that press for long. The River Street defenders, small folk with makeshift pikes and tanner's knives, would break sooner. She turned to Brienne. "We need Bran's roots again." Brienne nodded. Sprinting for the courtyard, where ravens perched by hundreds, black wings twitching in agitation. She found Bran already at the heart of tangling weirwood roots exposed through cracked paving stones, his face bloodless. He'd spent the night in warging trances, guiding grappling vines that now sagged, sapped of sap by too much magic in too little time. "Please," Brienne whispered, kneeling. "One more call." Bran's blind eyes focused on her as if seeing for the first time that morning. Voice raw, he answered. "The tree inside these walls is dying. It cannot bear so much again." "Dice." "Then use me," she said. "Use all of us. We'll be the roots if you guide us." He raised a trembling hand. Bran, the boy who held kingdoms in his dreams, touched Brienne's brow. When his fingers met her skin, she felt winter surge through her veins, ancient and bright, star-cold. For an instant, she stood in endless snows under aurora lights, hearing how ice sang when fractured by dawn. Outside the gate, Aegon Waters lifted his fist. Drummers behind him beat a thunder roll. The Valyrian line advanced. Arrows hissed from the walls but clattered off layered shields. Sansa clenched the parapet so hard knuckles bled white. Brienne raised her sword high, and as she roared a challenge, something rippled across the cobbles. Frost formed at her boots, spiderwebbing through cracks. Steam hissed where burning pitch had dried hours earlier, now chilled white. Small folk and cloaked guards within earshot felt it too, breath frosting as if the long night had slipped its chain. Bran's power, diffused now through beating hearts instead of severed roots, stretched beneath the streets, seizing moisture, hardening earth. The first Valyrian soldiers hit that patch of stone and found footing slick as mirror ice. Shields slid, ranks bulged. Archers above loosed again. This time arrows punched through upturned neck seals. Men fell, crimson blooming on frozen ground. Aegon recalculated on the move, bellowing for dispersal. He signaled a wedge to break left, skirt the frost slick. They surged down Lavender Lane, only to find barricades of overturned wagons already set ablaze by hidden hands. Flames roared so hot they warped spearheads as men pressed close. Then from rooftops leapt cloaked figures, brotherhood without banners, long daggers cutting throats before the soldiers could wield pikes. The invaders' advance stalled into chaos. Aegon felt anger flare, but training held. He whistled sharp. Overhead, Valyria tucked wings and streaked down to the barricade, spewing orange flame. Wood exploded. Brotherhood men vanished in sparks. The lane cleared. On the parapet, Sansa felt heat hit her cheeks, and knew the frost-trick Bran's magic breathed would not last. She turned to Willis. "Signal the cisterns." Throughout the city, bell ringers swung hammers once, twice, thrice. At each toll, millworkers smashed clay seals on rooftop reservoirs. Torrents gushed through gutters, down spouts, into the streets. Spring rain coaxed by human hands. Water steamed where it touched lingering embers, raising a fog so thick it swallowed flames. Valyria, confused, banked hard. Wings clipped a bell tower. The dragon shrieked as stone sent shards into his hide. He wobbled out toward the bay. Iranian roared from on high. A voice cut through the roar. Mary's Valerian astride him now, armor shimmering like dawn on wet pearl. She pointed spear of fused glass toward the red keep. Orishan swept downward to follow her command. The green-black dragon slammed into the King's Gate with force of a falling mountain. Rams forged of bronze and muscle were nothing compared to 24 tons of drake fury. Gateposts shattered. The oaken iron doors flew back. Mary's shouted an order none beneath her language could understand, yet every Valyrian soldier felt its meaning. They surged through the breach. Sansa saw them pour like ants into the courtyard where Targaryen skulls once rested. She whispered apologies to her mother, her father, to everyone whose safety she could not guarantee. Turning to Podrick, she said, "We hold the throne room last. If it falls, burn it. Better ashes than chains." Podrick swallowed but nodded, eyes bright with the terror of men asked to do dreadful things. Hundreds of leagues north, Jon Snow climbed the spine of the Ice Fangs with 6 wildlings and the last 3 rangers of the Watch. The path they followed was no path, just wind-scoured shelf above a gorge where black water snarled beneath frost. Mammoths once trod here, Tormund said, though none had been seen for 2 lifetimes. Jon's lungs burned. Every gust tasted of metal and memories. But the guidance Bran sent through raven feathers was clear. Follow the lights that burn without flame. They found the first at dusk. Columns of ghostly radiance swirling above a frozen lake. The aurora ribbons coiled tighter here, sliding into the ice like threads pulled through cloth. Beneath, frost cracked, revealing cavernous hollows where blue fire flickered. Wun's nephew, little more than a giant boy, knelt, frowning. "Ice sings," he rumbled. "Deep." Jon laid gloved palm on the surface. Instead of frigid smoothness he expected, he felt warmth. Not heat, but a living thrum, like the dragon had once ridden breathing far below. He fetched his dragonglass blade, striking the ice. A single chime rang out, echoing across the basin. Light rippled in response, drawing arcs toward the center. With each pulse, the warmth rose. Snow hissed, vaporizing. The ice cracked open, not a fissure but an iris. From its widening pupil, a shape ascended. Not flesh, not bone, but crystal and frost given terrible intent. A creature vast, wings translucent like glass forged of winter's storm, body pulsating with internal starlight. Each beat of its heart sent frost spirals across the surface. Tormund stumbled back, splaying arms to herd the others. Jon alone remained near, transfixed. The ice dragon's eyes opened, 2 orbs of unbroken moonlight. They fixed on him, recognition ancient as the dawn of men. Words shaped directly in his mind. "Blood of wolf." Fire touched. He answered aloud, though lips hardly moved. "We seek your aid." Fire invades. Silence like falling snow. Then, fire burns. Ice remembers. Wings spread. Wind gusts blasted drifts off ridges. The dragon's neck bent low till cold breath coated Jon in rime. He shuddered, but stood. "You carry betrayal's scar." Jon touched chest where he'd been stabbed by his own Night's Watch brothers. "Yes. Pain carves wisdom. A rider must bear truth's weight." The ice dragon knelt, a gesture as solemn as any knighted bow. "Mount.c." Tormund cursed something about frozen balls. Jon climbed the ridge of crystal scales. They felt warm now. Hetless warmth, like standing within the heart of a snowflake made real. As he settled where neck met shoulders, the dragon rose. His companions scrambled back as wings unfolded wider than Winterfell's courtyard. Without warning they launched skyward. Gravity surrendered. Cold tore tears from Jon's eyes even through heavy cowl, but exhilaration overruled fear. Above clouds, they joined ribbons of aurora, until man and beast were invisible within the night's own veins. They turned south. Garland Tyrell rode hard across fields once golden, but now ringed with burned stubble. His outriders had torched granaries after evacuating farmers. Better deny grain to invaders than feed them. Smoke columns made grim progress markers. Behind him, 50 knights of the Thorn Guard wielded spears tipped with mirror steel, a reach experiment rumored to reflect dragon flame. They had yet to test it on a living dragon. A horn bleated from Hillcrest. A Tyrell scout galloped down, face ashen. Silver banners on the march, my lord. 5,000 foot, 300 heavy cavalry. Valyrian slavers taken from the disputed lands. Garland spurred forward to vantage. Through haze he saw them, phalanx glittering like fish scales, cavalry helm crests styled as serpent heads. At their center, a standard with twin serpents around a burning tower. Not Mary's herself. She was in the sky, but one of her archons advanced to secure supply lines. He considered retreat, but memory of Bitterbridge's glassed crater hardened his gut. If these men reached Highgarden uncontested, the reach would bleed dry. He raised hand, signaled. Horns answered, their plaintive call drifting like lark song over smoking plains. From woods emerged columns of Southron levies, high-ranking knights astride destriers, crossbowmen in speckled camo cloaks. The ground between armies became a bowl of tension, heat shimmering off ash. Then, thunder not from dragons but hooves. Garland's heavy riders thundered downslope. Valyrian cavalry met them in shower of sparks. Mirror-steel lances shattered bronze pikes. Horses screamed, collapsing. The melee dissolved into ragged pockets of bladework. Garland himself dueled a commander whose armor bore glyphs swirling with faint purple light. The man fought with spear like dancing flame, each thrust leaving streak of sorcerous afterglow. Twice he grazed Garland's pauldron. The third strike scored breastplate, but mirror steel held. Garland countered, severing spear haft, and drove longsword through gorget. Purple light sputtered as blood hissed on enchanted edge. The archon fell. Bells cracking like broken glass. Around them, Reach longbowmen released volleys of steel-tipped shafts into gaps created by collapsing command. Enemy ranks buckled. Yet the Valyrian infantry did not rout. Sorcerer officers raised black flutes to lips, weaving notes that made corpses jerk upright, staggering back into line. Dead men fought anew, eyes vacant. A shiver crept up Garland's spine. Necromancy, beyond anything Maesters prepared them for. He signaled trumpeter, green banner up. From crest of ridge, thundered barrels of lamp oil, rolled aflame. They tumbled, smashing within enemy files, fire slicking armor. Mirror-steel knights followed, chopping undead limbs that would not burn. Sun dipped, casting brutal tableau in amber light. At last, Valyrian horn blew retreat. Survivors dragged dead, and living alike toward river crossing to the east. Garland let them go. His own casualties lay thick. He dismounted, knelt among fallen, whispered each by name. Night insects began chorus as he ordered wounded to Highgarden. He told his steward, "Send ravens, Tyrell's hold, but sorcery walks our fields. Pray the godswood has answers." Back in King's Landing, battle raged room to room inside the Red Keep. Valyrian infantry climbed marble staircases slick with blood, blades thirsting for the queen's head. Sansa directed defenders through hidden passages her father once traversed in secrecy. She armed cooks with meat cleavers, stable hands with pitchforks. They held the Hall of Lamps long enough for Willis to treat Brienne's burned arm. Sparks had caught her cloak when she'd shielded 3 children so they could climb to an upper corridor. Brienne's teeth were still clenched in silent pain as Sansa gripped her good hand. "We buy Jon time," the queen whispered. "He is coming." Brienne wanted to believe, but a crash from far end of hall shook dust from rafters. Valyrian soldiers shoved through tapestry of Aegon the Conqueror. Their faceless masks gleamed. They moved in perfect lockstep. Brienne rose, wincing taut. She hefted Oathkeeper. "Time isn't free. It's bought with steel." They fought side by side. Podrick's sword rang counterpoint. Every swing carved another fraction from their strength, but they made the enemy pay in screams. Bodies piled ankle deep before the hall's steps, but more spilled in. Always more. Marys entered then, descending the corridor's far rise, astride no dragon but on foot, slender spear humming with internal fire. Her helmetless face seemed sculpted from dawn's first light. Skin pearl lustrous. Eyes amethyst. Blood stained her breastplate, yet she walked as if unburdened. Valyrian ranks parted respectfully. Sansa stared across the carnage. Two women in the shell of a dying palace, each bearing destinies that could not coexist. Mary spoke first, her Valyrian words rolling into common like silk across a blade. "Lay down your arms, Queen of Ash. I would spare your folk further suffering." "Maros." Sansa lifted chin streaked with soot. "You call me Queen of Ash while your dragons burn my city? I burn obstacles." Maris gestured at the wreckage. "Rebirth requires cleansing." Brienne stepped forward, sword point to floor. "Not while we breathe." Mary's smile was gentle. "Then breathe your last in honor." She inclined spear. The crystal tip glowed. A whip crack of light lanced across hall. Brienne shifted. Too slow. The spear grazed her thigh. Flesh sizzled. Armor flared white. She collapsed. Podrick screamed, charging. With languid grace Mary's sidestepped, butt of spear slammed his temple. He fell boneless. Sansa drew the catspaw blade. "If it ends here, it ends with us both bloodied." Maris' amusement flickered. "You think this about thrones?" "Child, it concerns epochs. Valyria once guided the world. The world suffers without guidance. The world suffers under tyrants." Sansa advanced, steel glinting. They met at shattered center of the hall, where Targaryen banners smoldered. Sansa darted in low, catspaw blade seeking joint of Mary's pauldron. Mary's parried with haft. Sparks flew. A backhand strike cut through Sansa's sleeve, drawing shallow line. Pain sharpened focus. She wove left. Slashed. Mary's countered effortlessly, spear swirling. But she underestimated stark endurance. A lifetime surviving cruelty taught Sansa to turn wounds into will. She closed distance, grabbed spear shaft with her offhand, yanking Mary's forward. The Valyrian queen stumbled a pace. Sansa drove dagger upward, but not high enough. It slid off chestplate. Mary's twisted, elbowing Sansa's jaw. Worlds spun. Sansa fell, losing grip on blade. Mary's leveled spear tip at her throat. Heat radiated, blistering skin. "Yield." Sansa hissed through blood-tasted teeth. The North remembers. Before Mary's could drive the spear home, a tremor shook castle foundations. The air fell unnaturally cold. Frost blossomed across broken tiles, devouring spilled blood into ruby crystals. Mary's recoiled, confusion etching eyebrow. A thunderclap split heavens. Ceiling stones groaned. Through shattered dome soared a creature of living diamond, wings fanning prismatic shards of moonlight. Jon Snow rode its nape, cloak snapping like storm banners. Ice dragons' roar chilled marrow. Every torch in hall guttered out. Iranian shrieked outside, answering challenge. The bronze drake swooped to courtyard, flame erupting in column bright as sunrise. But when he turned claws to tear roof open wider, his fire met a sheet of crystalline breath. Flame winked under sudden hoarfrost, cracking mid-air as if glass. Iranian lurched, momentum arrested, wings shearing through brittle flame-frost mixture. Jon leapt from saddle through the rent roof, landing on table splintered by prior bombardment. Snow-dusted hair and shoulders, his eyes fixed on Sansa prone beneath Maris' shadow. "Step away," he growled. Maris' gaze flicked over him, and she laughed, soft, almost sorrowful. "Another Targaryen pretender." "I wear no crown," Jon replied. "But you'll find I'm harder to kill than most." He advanced, drawing Longclaw. The blade gleamed pale, Valyrian steel hungry for kin blood. Mary's spun spear overhead, arcs casting fleeting halos. They met. Steel rang, dot. Longclaw parried spear jabs that blurred faster than eyes could follow. Frost radiated from Jon's strikes. Wherever edge met haft, ice webbed across shimmering glass. Mary's expression shifted from confidence to curiosity, to controlled alarm. Sansa crawled aside, finding Podrick unconscious but breathing. Brienne pushed upright, refusing to fail again. She saw how Jon's ice aura hindered Mary's spear, dulling its glow. "The spear!" she shouted. "Break it!" Jon heard. He angled next parry, locking blade against haft, twisted. Ice spread deeper, cracks forming. Merys snarled, yanked back, but steel bit harder. With a cry, Jon pivoted, haft shattered into glittering shards. Merys staggered. Shock gave way to fury. She raised armored gauntlet. Runes along fingers ignited. Conjuring an ember orb, she hurled at Jon's chest. The projectile struck, flame sprayed, but Longclaw deflected much of it, leaving black scorch across Gambeson. Jon pressed advantage, cutting shoulder, strap, bot. Plate tumbled, revealing linen beneath. Blood-stained white fabric. Outside, Iranian attempted to breach again but found roof now sheathed in ice, thick as dwarf steel. He roared frustration. The ice dragon hammered him from above, jaws clamping onto bronzed neck ridge. Their combined weight drove them crashing into the river, sending plume of steam skyward. In the hall, Merys bled. First time since Doom's rebirth. She gazed at crimson on palm with detached wonder. "So this is cost," she whispered. She dropped a broken spear, drew dagger curved like dragon talon. Then she stepped toward Sansa instead of Jon. Jon lunged, but floor beneath him split. Merys' whispered word triggered runes left behind from earlier incantations. A gout of molten rock fountained, blocking path. Merys knelt before Sansa, voice low. "You win this battle, not the war. Valyria cannot die twice." She pressed dagger hilt into Sansa's hand. "Hold this token. Remember me when your people beg for what only we can give." Then she spoke a syllable that shattered glass panes still clinging to frames. Fire whooshed, engulfing her, and when flame receded, nothing remained but faint smear of molten quartz cooling in swirling frost. Sansa stared, shaking. Brienne rushed to her, pulling her away from the lingering heat. Jon vaulted rubble to reach them. "She's gone," Sansa rasped. "Or escape." Jon offered hand, hauling her up. "She'll be back." A thunderous boom outside. Jon looked skyward through ragged roof. Iranian burst from river spray. Dripping water turned to sizzling steam, but battered, wings torn, neck gouged. The ice dragon burst up second later, teeth bared, frost trailing. They clashed mid-air, tails slamming waves into walls. Sansa sagged. "How many must die before this ends?" "As many as it takes," said a new voice. Arya, lean and bloody, slipping from vaulted doorway. "But maybe we can shorten the list." She produced small flask of dark liquid. Picked it off a mage. "Says it disrupts glass candle magic. Might cripple their communication." Jon accepted it. Every edge counts. Brienne lifted eyes, watching dragons tear at each other above the river. "Edges will not mend broken walls." Sansa squared shoulders. "Then we rebuild, while we bleed them." Far across the sea, Merys rematerialized within the obsidian sanctum of Valyria's tallest tower. Pain lanced shoulder, but she knelt before pulsing crystal dais. Valaris, an assembly of archons, looked on in stunned allegiance. Her voice scarcely above whisper. She said, "They awaken powers older than our own. We must answer in kind." Now Valaris trembled. "What do you command?" Merys raised gaze shard bright. "Free the shrouded ones from the vault of sighs. Let oceans hear their song." A hush like midnight seas swept chamber. The vault of sighs had remained sealed since before the doom, holding horrors even old Valyria feared. Yet challenge demanded answers. The archons bowed without word. Merys looked toward the east window where faint outline of Iranian, wounded, glided across bloodless bay toward home. "Rest, my love," she whispered into the wind. "When next we soar, the world will witness judgment entire." Night blanketed King's Landing, silent but for dripping eaves and distant coughing. Fires had finally died under torrents loosed from reservoir towers. The Red Keep's broken corridors steamed as ice melted in rivulets, pooling where molten rock had hardened to glass. Sansa leaned at Bran's bedside. The boy king slept, face waxen. Wreaths of frost still clung to lashes. Maester Willis warned any further effort might kill him. Sansa pressed fingers to his, lips forming wordless promise. No more until he healed. Down in the throne room, roof partly collapsed. Jon and Arya conferred with Davos, Brienne, and generals from Vale and Riverlands newly arrived by secret tunnels. Maps sprawled across blackened table. Valyrian supply fleet gathered at Tarth, Davos reported. We sink it, they'll feel the pinch. Can't do that with sticks and good wishes, Arya noted. Need ships. Davos grinned despite lines of fatigue. I know a smuggler or three. Brienne tapped parchment, marking reach front. Garland holds but requests mirror steel resupply. Forage is scarce. Winter will starve his levies before dragons, if we can't reopen Roserod. Jon stared at outline of Westeros, mind heavy with inevitability. We can't win this by attrition. Mary said epochs. She fights to reforge the world. Then break her forge, Arya said. She flipped dagger. Kill the queen. Cut the head. Jon shook head. Valyria isn't a single head. It's myth resurrected. Remove Mary's, another rises. Sansa joined them, face pale but resolved. We don't need to cut a head. We need to shatter the myth. She pointed at iced river outside. We wounded their invincible dragon. We held against sorcery they claimed made them gods. Spread those tales. Let every free city see they bleed as we do. Davos caught on. Turn fear into courage. Rally Essos itself. Exactly. Sansa lifted chin. Merchants, sailors, slaves who fled their chains, anyone threatened by a new empire. We form our own alliance. Jon exhaled. A world against Valyria. A free world. Sansa's eyes shone like dawn burning through smoke. And we begin tomorrow. 2 dawns later, fluttering sails bearing the kraken of the Iron Islands appeared on the horizon near Tarth. Victorian Greyjoy, scars fresh from brush with Dornish scorpions, had smelled opportunity in chaos. Plundering Valyrian supply ships promised riches unmatched. But as his fleet approached, a song drifted across the water. Deep, resonant, layering like stones in echoing well. Sailors clamped hands to ears. Some wept blood. Victorian barked orders to raise black sails, but oarsmen slumped, eyes wide and empty. From ocean depths rose shapes, wreathed in bioluminescent tendrils. Scaled humanoids with elongated limbs, mouths ringed in needle teeth. The shrouded ones. Their song bent wood, cracked keels. Ironborn shrieked as creatures swept decks, dragging men screaming into watery shadows. Ships groaned, twisting, before slipping beneath turquoise dark. From cliffs of Tarth, Valyrian magisters watched impassively. Their queen had unleashed another relic, and its baptism in blood paved wave-rippled pathway straight toward Blackwater Bay. At Dragonstone, Melisandre of Ashai felt the sea's song vibrate obsidian castle bones. She stepped to parapet, crimson robes flaring, whispering prayer to R'hllor. In the flames she saw water devouring fire, ice devouring water, darkness poised to devour all. Her last vision before dawn showed the painted table shattering under axe, carved of twilight, then reassembling itself in pattern new and vast, continents realigned. She turned from the fire, eyes wet. Azor Ahai is upon us, she said to empty hull. Yet who holds the sword? Jon rode ice dragons south toward Dragonstone, after ravens bore word of Melisandre's visions. Sansa dispatched him with fragile truce. Melisandre's prophecies cost many lives once, but now her sight might save tenfold. As he flew, coastline sped beneath like map unrolling, dotted with flames where skirmishes raged. Upon landing, Melisandre greeted him with gaze, soft as ember glow. I smelled winter on the wind long before you hatched that beast, she said. Now winter carries salt. Jon dismounted. We need answers, not riddles. She motioned him inside. Then look. Within the chamber of painted table, she spread ashes across Westeros' outline. They coalesced into shapes, Valyria's fleet encircling Storm's End, shrouded ones swimming beneath them, forming hidden talons. Memory of ice dragon trailing frost line, and a distant horizon, silhouette of another dragon, larger than any before, wreathed in void. Melisandre murmured. Mary's reaches for the sleeper beneath the smoking sea. If she wakes it, the world will burn and drown at once. Jon felt chill worse than high winds. What is the sleeper? The first dragon, forged when moon kissed sun, before men. Her eyes glimmered. Its name unspoken since doom. It dreams in molten caverns. Mary's glass candles probe that dream. When they fracture it open, no ice will staunch the flame. Jon closed eyes. Saw Sansa kneeling among wounded. Bran pale upon weirwood roots. Arya wiping blood from daggers. He opened them. Tell me how to stop her. Melisandre's gaze drifted to his sword. Ice met fire and birthed mist. Only steel tempered in both may sever her link. Valyrian steel, cooled in the heart of an ice dragon. Jon looked to Longclaw, then to the beast outside, silhouette circling towers. He set jaw. Then, it will be done. In Valyria, Mary stood on isthmus newly bridged by fused stone causeway. She gazed down at chasm of roiling magma, the vault of sighs open now. Chains thicker than galley masts clanked as they lifted something enormous. A single reptilian eye, the hue of molten opal, blinked beneath crust of obsidian. The sleeper began to stir. She placed bloodied palm on a pillar inscribed with spirals. Her whisper traveled through chains, through scales, into dreaming brain. Rise, progenitor. Let us remake the world together. The eye focused on her, and the pillar shook with rumble deeper than worlds. Mary smiled, not as conqueror, but as child hearing lullaby. Beyond the peninsula, blood-red storm clouds gathered, twisting into cyclone that pointed like an accusing finger straight toward Westeros. A week later, in the war room of River Run where lords had gathered, Tyrell, Martell, Aaron Baratheon vassals, surviving Lannisters, Sansa stood before map, pinned with many-colored flags. Reports of drowned Ironborn and vanishing Dornish fishing villages littered parchment edges. She spoke, voice carrying weight no bells could mute. The war has changed. Dragons we can wound, sorcery we can interrupt, but now the sea itself fights us. Davos coughed into fist. Ships still float, your grace. We know these waters better than any conjured horror. Let me lead a fleet, catch their songbringers between torch and tide. Nymeria Sand smirked. You bring torches to sing underwater? He frowned. I bring wildfire, enough to churn the seas. Sansa shook head. A gamble we can't afford. Jon entered then, cloak dusted with rime. All eyes turned. He set Longclaw on table. Blade glimmered with faint new opacity, where ice magic had begun soaking in. He spoke softly. I know how to kill the sleeper. Margaery Tyrell leaned forward, interest sparking. First let's ensure it never wakes. Jon met her gaze. We must strike Valyria itself. The room erupted. Lord shouted, impossibility. Too far. Too defended. Jon raised hand. If we wait, Valyria will come to us with nightmares we cannot contain. We fly first. Arya's smile was like moonlight on steel. Then give me a ship. I'll put a blade through their queen while you slay her beast. Sansa considered. Finally she nodded. A two-prong assault. Jon and Bran on the ice dragon. Arya with a strike team through sea caves under Valyrian cliffs. Davos captain smuggler fleet as distraction. Garland and Margaery hold the realm. Brienne protects Bran's body while his mind guides roots across the... Roots don't grow in salt, Bran said from doorway, chair pushed by Podrick. But rivers feed into it. I can ride those veins. Sansa's eyes misted with pride and fear. Then we sail at first tide. Night before departure, Jon stood on Dragonstow's shore. Waves hissed at obsidian cliffs. The ice dragon loomed behind like cathedral of frost. Jon drew Longclaw, inspected new pattern blooming along fuller vines of icy light throbbing with latent power. He sheathed blade, leaning into wind heavy with brine. Footsteps crunched. Sansa joined him, cheeks reddened by cold. They watched moon's silver path across water. "You will go where no Stark has walked," she said. "Father walked beyond wall," Jon replied. "I ride past doom." She smiled sadly. "Then promise me, if the world remakes, find your place in it. I do not want a throne of bones." He took her hand. "Nor I." She pressed something to his palm. "Mary's dagger. Kill myths." He nodded, slipping it into belt. Brother and sister embraced beneath roiling stars. Dawn. The ice dragon lifted from Dragonstone's courtyard, wings fanning frost. Bran's ravens wheeled in spirals above, linking mind to mind across leagues. Brienne stood beside Bran's chair on deck of Davos' flagship, Wild Rose, hand on sword. Arya waited aboard a lean sloop, repurposed from Lyseni smugglers. Sails died midnight. Fleet broke harbor, scattering gull cries. Far horizon burned red. Not sunrise, but glow of Valyrian furnaces. They sailed into myth. Ahead, across thousands of foaming waves, Maris knelt by the sleeper's colossal head, whispering scriptures of fire. Chains clinked. Lids peeled fully open, revealing abyssal slit pupils staring toward oncoming dusk. At that instant, high above clouds, a ribbon of aurora severed sky. The ice dragon screamed challenge, and for first time since doom, all elements, fire, ice, sea, storm, gathered to decide which would claim the age to come. The War of Beginnings would find its ending in the shadow of broken mountains, amid cinders of empires, dead and dreams reborn. And every heartbeat from peasant to queen would write the cadence of that final chorus. Noon's light crawled across an iron-gray sea as the Allied fleet pressed toward the smoking coast. Wind bit with an acrid tang. Sulfur dragged on air dense enough to taste, while waves slapped hulls in listless cadence. Sailcloth snapped overhead, painted with sigils never before flown side by side. The direwolf of Winterfell stitched beside the blue rose of Highgarden, the sun and spear of Dorne, the trident of River Run, the broken wheel of House Tarth reborn, and Devos' own stubborn onion. Between masts perched Bran's ravens like living pennants, black eyes sparkling with hidden constellations as they watched a horizon blurred by heat and legend. Davos Seaworth stood at the Wild Rose's forecastle, knuckles white on rail, face reddened by spray. Ahead, the sea changed color, wine dark to sullen green to a near-luminous turquoise that smoked where it lapped the shattered peninsular shelf. Pumice Islands drifted like ghosts of former mountains. Even the veteran smuggler felt awe snag in his chest, but duty crushed it flat. He gave the signal. 4 sharp bell clangs. Oars dipped. The fleet slowed, coalescing into defensive crescent. On the quarterdeck, Brienne leaned over Bran's chair. The boy king's lips moved in a litany older than the old tongue, voice a faint thread in thunder of surf. "Roots," he had said, "do not grow in salt, but rivers feed the sea." Through those river veins he whispered to every tree that had ever known fresh water before surrendering its tears to brine. One by one they answered, their memories braiding through Bran in a lattice of green and white energy that shimmered just behind his blind eyes. The strain haunted his pallor, but he refused rest. Through him, the fleet's hulls creaked, not with fear but resolve. To starboard the ice dragons circled, vast wings stirring maelstroms of snow that hissed into nothing on contact with volcanic heat. Upon its nape Jon sat cloaked in matted polar bear pelt, long claws sheathed but thrumming. A lattice of frost veins now marbled that Valyrian steel, a silent testament to nights colder than death. Beside him sat no one. Flight to doom required only rider and purpose. Yet he felt Sansa's unseen hand on his shoulder, Arya's feral grin on the wind, Ghost's memory panting across time. Even Father's voice, quiet honor forged in Winterfell's godswood, seemed to murmur at the edge of the gale. Below in the sloop storm shadow, Arya crouched by the mast, face darkened with ash. 5 companions ringed her, Jaqen H'ghar, who once taught her to wear other skins. Nymeria sand, curved blade strapped along spine. Gendry Baratheon in hammered steel he forged for himself during lonely nights. Grey Worm, refugee commander seeking justice for cities enslaved. And a silent priestess of the drowned god whose name none had asked, because some faiths survive only when unspoken. Their craft hugged shoals, oars muffled, sails reefed down to rags. Goal. Slip beneath Valyrian cliffs through sea caves charted by smugglers centuries dead. Thrust daggers into the Empire's throat from within. Purple haze crowned the peninsula ahead. It writhed like wounded sky, pierced by peaks of fused obsidian. Each peak spat lightning, tethered to ground not by cloud, but by threads of molten gold, residual spell energy venting from forges hungry since the doom. The sight snagged sailors' hearts. Some crossed themselves, some cursed, some wept. Signal? Davos barked. Drummers beat the cadence. From Hold's crew hauled barrels painted flame green. Stolen wildfire watered down with brine to temper its bite. When the fleet veered east-northeast, 2 carracks broke formation, sliding toward shore with holds lit by lazy emerald glow. Suicide ships, but crewed by volunteers from Flea Bottom, who had scraped survival from dragon raids, and now craved vengeance that could ignite oceans. Wind shifted. A low moan rose from beneath waves, the same abyssal hymn that had drowned Ironborn days earlier. Shrouded ones surfaced in a wide arc, scaled torsos gleaming, lamprey jaws opening in unison. Their song pressed like phantom fingers against every skull. Men staggered. One archer toppled from rigging, screaming until silence took him. Bran's ravens shrieked. Through the boy's half-lidded eyes, Brienne saw the birds bolt in black explosion, dive towards sea monsters, and scatter across them like coals across water. Talons raked eyes, beaks stabbed gill slits. Disoriented sirens shrilled off-key, song fracturing. Davos roared orders. The suicide carracks pressed ahead, oars biting foam. On high, Jon tugged reins of frost-woven leather. The ice dragon tucked wings, dropping sheer. A roar like glacier calving drowned all noise. Breath streamed, a torrent of liquid winter. It struck the sea, flashed freezing waves into jagged flows that locked shrouded ones beneath translucent tombs. Their muffled cries warped into silence as water hardened. The dragon banked away, trailing spirals of snow. Fleet cheered, short-lived. A thunderclap shattered the horizon. The sleeper's first exhalation. Steam columns rose miles high, coiling into spiral of black and red that turned midday to bruised twilight. Atop the rebuilt citadel Marys, Valerian watched, hair plastered by gusts, armor still smeared where Sansa's dagger found purchase. Pain throbbed, but glory eclipsed it. The sleeper's eye tracked the sky, pupils narrowing upon the ice dragon like predator recognizing rival. She spread arms. Glass candles arrayed in heptagonal pattern blazed, feeding red light into translucent veins of tower stone. Spell energy leapt across causeways, down into massive chains that still moored the dragon titan's torso. One by one iron links, 7 men tall, red-hot, split open. A groan deep enough to shatter cliffs rumbled through peninsula. The sleeper rose. Davos cursed the mother and father together. The beast dwarfed mythology, longer than dragonstone. Wings panoplies of living magma, horns curved like scimitars forged for gods. Lava dripped from its maw in gobs that sizzled into obsidian glass before striking sand. Earthquakes radiated outward, churning surf into whirlpools. Light it, Davos rasped through grit teeth. Fire arrows streaked from his deck toward the carracks. Sails blossomed into jade conflagrations. Oarsmen leapt overboard moments before holds burst. Wildfire gouts churned the bay, green inferno racing across oily surface toward foot of main causeway. Shrouded ones trapped under ice creamed again as flames sought oxygen, sliding under frozen crust, detonating pockets of steam. Explosions sent ice, shrapnel sky high. Marys felt the shock but held the spell. She lifted glass dagger, twin to the one she'd gifted Sansa, and sliced palm anew, blood spilling into crystal basin. Power flared, scorching wound into lace. 24 wyvern wing archons chanted behind her, weaving barrier coils to deflect incoming frost that already sweat from distant dragons' second dive. Arya's sloop meanwhile threaded sea gauge where cliffs split into jagged maws. Waves heaved, smashing prow, but storm shadow endured. Gendry's oar strokes and grey worm's command steered them into cavern throat, just as plume of wildfire ignited entrance, cloaking retreat in hell colors. Salt spray hissed along gunwale, but shadows swallowed them. Within the cavern labyrinth, stalactites hung like teeth of extinct leviathan. Stalagmites erupted, forming columns bridged by rope ladders older than most kingdoms. Torch gleams flickered from Valyrian patrols on ledges. Jaqen tapped Arya's shoulder, then leapt upward, becoming shadow upon shadow. Seconds later, a guard toppled with throat, a red smile. Faceless teachings blossomed crimson along their route. Team glided upward, deeper, until subterranean winds tasted of brimstone and other, stranger humors. Age, death, possibility. On the wild rose decks shook. Bran slumped. Blood dribbled from nose. Brienne steadied him. He's turning their song, he whispered. But the sleeper hums a deeper chord. I must go further. Rest first, Brienne pleaded. No, time. Bran's eyes rolled white. Ravens above wheeled dove into surf again, then soared toward cliffs. They vanished into fissures, carrying seeds of the Wyrnet across impossible boundaries. Bran's consciousness streamed after, mind weight stretching like molten metal. High above. Ziga resumed. Iranian? Scarred, angry, burst from clouds trailing half-healed wounds. Orishan and Morthrax banked behind in wedge. They converged on Ice Dragon with hellish intent. Jon spurred mount upward to meet them. Air rent with roars. Frost colliding flame. Iranian struck first. Jet of white-hot fire lancing. The Ice Dragon barrel rolled. Frost breath spilled lateral, meeting flame mid-air. Fusion of superheated steam detonated, hurling combatants apart. Jon clung, coughing. Through smoke, he glimpsed Orishan banking on intercept. Longclaw slid free. At 60 fathoms above waves he stood, balancing on ridge of glacial scale, and leapt. Freefall lasted heartbeat. He landed astride Orishan's neck, driving blade through seam between plates. Valyrian steel bit. Dragon shrilled agony, tilting. Jon held pommel, yanking blade sideways, carving channel that geysered black ichor. Orishan's wings faltered. They spiraled downward, smashing into cliff face, then crashing into bay, sending tsunamic surge toward fleet. Ice Dragon swooped, catching Jon in claws before he plummeted. They regained altitude even as Morthrax hammered flank, talons screeching across diamond armor. Jon sliced at passing foot, a talon severed, spinning into void. Morthrax roared, back-winging into rising steam. Below, Devos galleys fought waves created by Orisha's death. Wildfire still licked water, diminishing. Then new threat. Columns of obsidian soldiers marched through surf, skin plated in volcanic glass, eyes empty, save ember flicker. Spell-wrought, tireless. Their touch boiled flesh. Archers loosed storm of shafts, most shattered on crystal skin. Brienne ordered scorpion ballista pivoted, bolts of mirror steel punched shoulders free, limbs cracking. But for every shattered husk, 2 more waded ashore. Grey Worm's spear-tip found first sentinel within tunnels. Viscera steamed on rock. Team emerged into vaulted chamber where molten rivers fed forges, tended by slaves. Prisoners, Westerosi, Summer Islanders, Giscari, hammered in mindless rhythm, mouths sewn. Gendry's fury boiled. He smashed lock chains. Captives staggered back, eyes blank. Nymeria slashed stitches sealing lips. Some fell sobbing. Others rose, seizing tools as weapons. Revolution. Spark. Jaqen guided them toward spiral stair. Upward lay glass candle, nexus feeding sleepers, rebirth. Arya led point. Twice they dispatched mage guards whose eyes shone with candlelight. Each kill, dimmed towers, crimson gleam. Maris felt the drain like nails across nerves. She glanced aside. Glyph nets flickered. Archons faltered in chant. She hissed order. "Hold the weave." Then turned gaze seaward. Ice Dragon again rallied, carving crescents of frost along Iranian's wounded flank. She extended hand, channeled power into Warlord Drake. Bronze scales flared incandescent. Pain stoked rage. Iranian locked talons with foe, mouths grappling, wrestling across sky. Wind shear spun them inland across peninsula. Shattered citadel towers whipped by. Giant beasts crashed through obsidian spires, sending shards like black rain. Jon swung Longclaw, again and again, at welded joint of Iranian's jaw hinge. Sparks flew. Frost gnawed. A seam split. Fire spat, but could not reach Jon, who already thrust sword into soft tissue before ducking behind plating. Iranian convulsed. Ice Dragon heaved. Flipping enemy over then, slamming him onto cooling lava plain. Ground shook. Iranian sprawled, chest plates shattered, flame flickering weak. Morthrax dove to defend, but twin crossbow bolts, fired from Davis' top-tech Scorpion, punched wing membrane. The purple dragon tumbled, skid plowed through surf, colliding with obsidian rise. Mary screamed in mindlink, but maintained sleeper ritual. One more chain parted. Dragon Titan lifted shoulders free. Its roar tore cloudbank. Embers sprayed sky like meteor shower. Where sparks fell, forests miles distant burst alight. Inside Tower's uppermost chamber, Arya's team breached Sanctum. Glass floor beneath glowed, revealing magma flows swirling like starscape. In center rose days of fused crystal, atop which sang 7 candles. Flames inside those candles were living serpents, colors shifting by heartbeat. Magic hummed so loud teeth rattled. Jaqen murmured, "Touch nothing. Save purpose." Nymeria scanned shadows. Guardians absent. Spellcasters drawn to sleeper platform. Grey Worm wedged barricade across stairwell. Gendry lifted warhammer forged from dragon glass and star steel align. Arya approached dais. Each candle contained swirling images. Cities aflame, oceans feathered with frost, night skies replaced by viper constellations. She felt draw, 1,000 faces beckoning. Catspaw dagger, Mary's gift, burned at her hip. She unsheathed. "Steel of traitor," she whispered. "Let's see how you betray again." She plunged dagger into first candle. Shard clear note rang, glass spider webbed. Flame serpent wormed out shrieking, then winked dead. Second candle died under Jaqen's dirk. Nymeria shattered third with sandsteel scimitar. Each extinguished light dimmed sleeper's glow. Dragon Titan's rise slowed. But fourth candle fought back. Beam of ruby light speared into Nymeria's chest, lifting her from floor. She screamed as veins lit lava red. Gendry swung hammer, smashing candle and freeing her. She collapsed, smoking. Jaqen yanked her aside, pressed rag to bleeding wounds. 2 candles remained. Tower quaked. Archon sensed breach. Footfalls hammered stairs. Grey Worm braced shield wall of liberated slaves behind him. Arya met Gendry's eyes, unspoken goodbye, and darted toward penultimate candle. Just as she leapt, floor cracked. Crystal panel fell, sucking air and debris. She landed on rim, teetering above magma void. Dagger slid from grasp, disappearing into fire below. She scrambled, pulling onto deck while Gendry slammed hammer down, shattering second last candle. Flame extinguished with mournful wail. One left. Center flame, heart candle feeding sleeper chain spells. Matrix of glyphs pulsed frantic. Stair door exploded. Obsidian soldier wave poured in. Grey Worm's pike found first. Slaves swarmed others with hammers and chains. For every soldier felled, 3 more advanced. Hammerheads shattered, shards flew. Arya snatched spear from fallen guardian, vaulted dais, landed beside final candle. Foot caught on shard. She staggered as spearpoint slipped. Candle cracked slightly. Light inside flared, blinding. She shielded eyes. Voice filled chamber. Silken, potent. Mary's speaking through flame. "Little wolf, kill that candle and you sever the chain on which your whole world hangs." Arya hissed, "Better a broken chain than living in yours. You misunderstand. These flames don't bind the sleeper, they bridle it. Extinguish and the beast is free beyond my command." Then, Arya's pulse rang. Could Mary's bluff? She saw clarity. Mary's hold on sleeper fragile. Controlling beast required tether. Destroy candle, unleash Leviathan untamed. Leave candle, Mary's reigns, but perhaps chain can still be shattered by Yon's blade. She weighed lives. Winterfell words. When the snows fall and white winds blow. Lone wolf dies, but pack survives. She drove spear through heart candle. Shatter of galaxies. Shockwave hurled her backwards. Dais buckled, flinging shards across chamber. Obsidian soldiers froze mid-charge, glass eyes dimming. Chains anchoring sleeper snapped, not severed but dissolved into sparks. On citadel roof Mary's felt leash vanish. Power that had run through her chest yanked free like ripped artery. She gasped, staggering to knees. Archons cried out as towers lost glow. Glass candles across peninsula winked dark. A hush fell, then sky tore open. Sleeper's newborn howl rose to infrasound that cracked spires. Freed of guidance, beast turned golden iris upon nearest movement. Iranian stirring on lava plain, failing to rise. Sleeper lunged. Immense jaws closed over weakened dragon, severing neck in one bite. Bronze wings quivered once, then lay still. Mary screamed agony mirrored, bond ripped. On the lava plain Jon watched, horror lancing deeper than any blade. He had wanted to slay Iranian himself to disarm Mary's, but not feed it thus. The ice dragon hissed, wings mantled. Sleeper's attention snapped onto shimmering frost creature. Older instinct than flame recognized ancestral rival. It trumpeted volcanic wrath and launched skywards, scattering pumice islands like leaves. Each wing beat hurled molten debris that rained across bay, puncturing Davos masts. Wild rose reeled, sailors leapt fires. Bran felt the earth shift under Psyche. He reached for rivers once more. Freshwater memory pooling beneath volcano roots. But Sleeper's heartbeat was stone hammer. Bran's mind quavered at threshold of shatter. Brienne seized his shoulders. "Hold," he whispered. "Need, deeper water." Eyes rolled. He collapsed limp. Brienne held him, tears tracking soot. Jon guided Ice Dragon to ascend, meeting monstrosity head-on above roiling clouds. Clash dwarfed thunder. Sleeper expelled pyroclastic torrent. Ice Dragon answered with blizzard roar. Steam storm blossomed, towering anvil cloud glowing inside with strobe lightning as elements warred. Jon could scarcely see, only sense blistering heat ripping across left flank. Armor of ice crackled, sloughing shards. Yet frost breath pushed back flame enough that Sleeper's advance stalled. Jon willed mount higher, into stratosphere where air thin. Sleeper followed, but heat cooled, magma plates fissuring. Jon realized plan. Freeze it until crust dims lifeblood. But his dragon a living glacier, still limited. They had minutes before wings iced stiff. Across warfront Davos saw stately fall of ash snow mixture. Steam cooled into black dust. Visibility plummeted. He ordered retreat to deeper channel. Exploding pumice smacked deck, setting tar alight. Crews fought flames with brine. Inside tower, Arya regained footing. Chaos below as slaves routed soldier husks now inert. But quake intensified, tower beginning to collapse. Gendry hauled Nymeria onto shoulder. Grey worm signaled evacuate. Jaqen nodded, mouth curling in faint smile. A girl did choose wisely. Now we trust the sky. Men see. They fled through smoke-clotted corridors. Cavern tunnels flooded with rising magma. Stone bridges cracked. Yet they emerged onto cliff ledge, just as tower behind groaned and folded into itself. Night above now bruised purple, split by two titan silhouettes. Mary's crawled across cracked platform to Iranian's corpse, crying tears that hissed on scorched rock. She pressed bloody palm to cooling scale. Fire dimmed in her eyes, replaced by grief and lethal certainty. She stood, face streaked red-black, and turned to horizon where Sleeper dueled free. With final reservoir of power, she spoke incantation half-sung, half-choked. Words leapt skyward, forming net of ember glyphs around Leviathan's head. If she could not command, she would merge. Above, Sleeper stiffened, lines of runic fire knitting across crown toward snout. Ice Dragon beat wings slower now, frost pores clogging. Jon felt air thin, lungs raw. Yet he also saw Glyphnet attempt to tether. This was chance. Split second when beast distracted. He leaned forward, whispered to companion in knife-like wind. Dragon folded wings, diving. They pierced glare of glyphs. Shards of orange fractal reflecting off diamond scales. Longclaw unsheathed, shimmering icy light. Jon stood upon Dragon's muzzle. They arrowed toward gap beneath Sleeper's lowered chin where softer rock glass tissues pulsed. Mary sensed and screamed, pouring soul into containment. Sleeper jerked, snapping at dive. But too late. Ice Dragon's breath fired in narrow beam. Not wide blast. Drilling path of supercold into throat seam, while Jon plunged sword. Valyrian steel, tempered in fire long forgotten, now quenched by ice within Dragon, slid through volcanic cartilage, like sundering comet. Blade sank to hilt. Jon drove weight behind, ripping downward. A fissure raced across Sleeper's sternum as incompatible magics met. Aegon rivaled doom reborn. Shockwave blew clouds apart, revealing midday sun eclipsed by eruption. Jon's ears rang silence. Vision turned white. Ice Dragon recoiled, wings ragged. Sleeper convulsed, lava gore spewing. Glyphs dissolving. Mary's shriek echoed through mental realm, piercing Bran's ears across miles. Then severed as Dragon Titan's chest ruptured. It plummeted in burning avalanche onto peninsula, crushing forges, flattening towers. Impact triggered chain reaction. Magma reservoirs destabilized, superheating subterranean vents. Valyria began to sink. Wild Rose crews felt ground rush withdraw, the entire shelf sliding into sea. Davos' horse yelled all sails. Wind caught. Ships ran before pyroclastic surge that devoured horizon. Brienne clasped Bran, shielding with cloak as grit flayed air. Sleigh vessels rode frantically out of surf. On cliff areas teams sprinted downward, dodging falling boulders. A roar behind. Magma wave riding collapsed tower remnants. Grey Worm shoved Nymeria across gap, followed. Gendry leapt last, platform disintegrating as wave engulfed it. They clattered onto beach where rowboats awaiting. Oarsmen, freed prisoners, pushed into breakers. Sky turned sepia. Ice Dragon spiraled low, blood and snow streaming from cracks. Jon slumped, consciousness grabbing thawing edges. They angled toward sea, but wing faltered. Brienne looked up, heart halting. Beast descending uncontrolled, heading for fleet path. She shouted, but wind muted. Davos saw silhouette tumble. He spun wheel, veering flagship. Splash like mountain colliding with sea erupted. Tidal pulse-tipped vessels, throwing men. Ice Dragon thrashed, but could not rise. Jon slipped from saddle into foam, armor dragging. Ghostwhite Talon breached water near Wild Rose rail. Brienne didn't think. She dove, mail swamping. Underwater she glimpsed faint gleam of Longclaw sinking into depths. She pushed toward limp form. Arms closed around Jon's shoulders. Current chaotic. Dragon beat wing once then stilled. She kicked for surface, lungs aflame. Strong hand under her arm. Davos hull line. She and Jon pulled aboard as sailors roared relief. Maesters hurried. Bran stirred. He reached out, fingertips brushing Jon's brow, whispering life back. Eyes fluttered. Salt tears mixed with seawater on Brienne's face. Hours later, ashfall dwindled. Sunset painted western clouds blood violet. But horizon where Valyria stood now, only boiling sea. Steam pillars rose, reflecting dying light. Silence broken by gulls. Davos convened survivors on quarterdeck lit by lanterns. Arya's rowboat approached, crew bruised but alive. She climbed aboard, met Sansa's brother with weary grin and fist on his shoulder. Nymeria bandaged, Gendry hobbling. Grey Worm bereft but standing tall. Jaqen nowhere to be seen, vanished once mission complete. Bran wheeled forward, voice faint. Magic, there is broken. The world breathes freer. Jon looked toward vanished continent. A test. Costs measured against chains never forged, Arya answered. We chose as wolves do. Fleet set course north under star-spangled vault. Days became weeks. Westeros greeted return with cautious hope. News spreading of empire drowned by its own rebirth. Small folk whispered ice dragon preserved in northern Eyrie. Children carved figurines of Wolf Rider. Songs sprouted, though singers argued details. In King's Landing, masons rebuilt walls from stone fused and tempered by frost, calling them the Bastion of Dawn. Sansa ruled behind no throne but council circle, where lords and freedmen shared voice. Gold-minted bore direwolf on one face, rose on other, a promise that North and Reach would feed realm together. At Highgarden, Marguerite planted black rose whose petals shimmered fire-red inside, born from ash scraped of wildfire's sea. She called it unity. In Dorne, Nymeria Sand carried urn of her own near-death ashes to secret garden, sowing future of houses unbowed. Grey Worm sailed east with freed slaves aboard, battered but seaworthy galleon champion of Giscari Dawn, seeking homelands to the far summer sea. Ice Dragon recovered atop heart of Winter Plateau. Jon visited often, hand resting on Diamond Hide while wind sang through ruined battlements. Longclaw, dredged from depths by daring pearl divers, now bore vein of obsidian fused into blade, single streak of night down length of frostlit steel, a weapon forged by all the world's elements. One frost-bright dawn he found Bran awaiting in Godswood clearing of Winterfell, alone but for ravens. Snow fell silent. You saved the world from fire, Bran said. Now guard it against memory. Jon nodded, sensing weight of peace. Dangers would come, grass fires, petty wars, greed that breeds cold. But no empire stood whose shadow blotted stars. High above, ravens circled and dispersed across compass points, carrying seeds of new age. No songs of dragonlords this time, only stories of men and women who remembered they were packed. And as sunlight kissed frost-tipped leaves, Jon breathed deep, smelling ash and pine, salt and snow, the scent of world reborn from balance of flame and ice, then turned toward keep where Sansa waited, doors open, future unwritten and sprawling like fresh canvas beneath northern sky. Dawn crawled across the battlements of Winterfell, pale light, feathering frost-stiff merlons, in hues of rose and pearl. Far below in the bailey, hammers rang against new-cut timber, echoing with the promise of work rather than war. Jon watched from the rampart walk beside the ancient first keep, breath silvering. The chill did not unsettle him. He carried colder things inside now, echoes of the high skies where ice dragons danced among starlight and ash. Yet for the first time in memory those echoes did not hiss of onrushing doom, only of space enough for thought. A raven, one of Bran's, settled on the stone beside him. Its feathers were glossy obsidian, its eyes mismatched pools, whose depths Jon could never wholly fathom. The bird tilted its head, offered a single croak, then launched northward across the brightening sky. Bran's silent summons required no parchment. Jon turned, cloak swirling, and descended the tower steps. The great hall had changed. Where once banners of leaping direwolves alone claimed the rafters now hung a tapestry of the new compact. Direwolf twinned with golden rose, sun spear, trident, falcon, lion, kraken. each worked in subtle dyes, their threads interlaced so that no crest dominated. Sansa's court had become Congress. Lords, small folk leaders, free riders, and those maesters who clung to reason after Valyria's fall debated beneath vaulted beams. They argued grain quotas and levy schedules, boundary lines and the ancient law that once forbade wildlings south of the wall. They argued with vigor, and with voices often hoarse, but never again beneath the shadow of a single dragon's wing. Bran sat in the chill of the godswood beneath Winterfell's heart tree. Snow dusted crimson leaves, each stroke a painter's sigh. Ghosts of ravens stirred in the branches overhead, feathers rustling like secrets exchanged. The king's chair had been carved anew. In place of the iron wheels that once bound him was a sled of weirwood roots, living boughs shaped by soft green fire into spiraling runners. Yet his eyes seemed older than even the gray bark at his back. "I dreamed of rivers," he said as Jon approached, voice soft as thawing ice. Black water and Mander, Sarn and Trident all swelling together into a single mouth. They carried words instead of water. Jon crouched, feeling the damp moss through his breeches. What words? Peace offered, peace refused, peace bargained. The rivers will never speak the same tongue, but they can still flow to the same sea. Jon understood. Envoys from the free cities had begun to arrive in White Harbor and Gulltown, bearing fruit and furs, precious copper and promises. Even shattered Volantis sent representatives, their tiger cloaks frayed, but their resolve to rebuild fierce. The doom's wake had left half a continent trembling, ports choked by ash and pumice, trade routes sundered, and they looked west for steadier hands. Westeros, so long a blasted byword for civil war, had become a beacon because its people had slain the fear that turned men's hearts to iron. But there were other rivers in Bran's dream. Jon heard the unspoken current behind his brother's words. Mary's. The sea hasn't given her back, Bran said. Nor her body, nor her soul. Yet the weir-net whispers of embers drifting beneath waves, embers that refuse to drown. Then? Jon's hand tightened on the wolf-head pommel of Longclaw.d. The blade remained a paradox, ice-veined, obsidian-scarred, restless as winter lightning. If she survived, she's nursing wounds none should live through. She bound herself to fire and prophecy, Bran replied, unblinking. Some phoenixes burn because they must, not because they wish rebirth. Beware the ashes that remember their shape. Then we remain watchful, Jon said. But his mind drifted to other matters, forging alliances, restoring holdfasts scoured by ash storms, blown this far west, feeding thousands of freed Valyrian thralls resettled on empty Crownlands farms. Rebuilding demanded more skill than war. It required gardeners' patience. Bran's breath misted. The rebuilders will need a hammer. And a symbol. They look to you, whether you desire it or not. Jon shook his head. Sansa governs. I'm a sword they pulled from a pyre. One day they'll return it to the rack. Perhaps. A glimmer of gentle mischief softened Bran's stark features. But remember the promise you gave me in the sky above the smoking sea. Jon frowned. To guard the world against memory. Memory is not an enemy, Bran chuckled, frail shoulders rocking. It is the soil from which tomorrow grows. Guard it. Shape it. Carry it forward. Footsteps crunched in the snow behind them. Sansa approached, hood drawn, cheeks rose pink. She inclined her head to Bran, then fixed Jon with quiet resolve. A rider has come from Old Town, she announced. High Archmaester Belgrave requests our voice at a conclave. They mean to draft a new codex of magic, when to permit its practice, when to forbid, who may learn, and how. Then? Jon exhaled, smoke in the air. And they think we hold authority. You ride an ice dragon, brother, she said. And you plunged a blade into the heart of a god beast. They would be fools not to ask your counsel. They may listen, Bran added, if you speak for more than northern snows alone. Jon rose. Snow creaking under boots. Then we gather counsel of every corner. Let Garland send farmers with seed. Nymeria delegates who've danced with sand magic since Royne fell. Even the Ironborn, Victarian survivors, should claim a seat. Magic slipped its leash because men hoarded it in secret. Break the lock. Share the key. And so. Sansa's eyes warmed. She offered a thin scroll sealed in white wax. Belgrave proposes the conclave on Dragonstone at first thaw. Neutral ground far from the Citadel and from King's Landing. Will you attend? Dragonstone. Jon felt ghost pain along shoulders where frost scales once cut his thighs. I'll come. And the dragon? Jon glanced skyward. A speck drifted far above. His companion circling, silent sentinel. He goes where I go. But he'll not land on the old castle. The basalt would fracture under his weight. Dan. Bran's raven settled on his arm, as if claiming messenger's privilege. Jon scratched its neck feathers. Tell the maesters we come as equals, not conquerors, he murmured, though the bird seemed unlikely to ferry spoken words. It cocked its head, then burst into flight. Across the yard, the clang of practice swords rang. Young hall boys sparring beneath Sir Podrick's careful eye. One lad staggered, regained footing, pressed his advantage with grin. There was future in that grin, one unmarred by terrors most children carried. A stable hand approached, bowing. My lord, the Volantene envoy requests audience. He's brought maps of Delta farmlands. Asks if Reach engineers would advise on levee repair. Tell him yes, Jon said. And ask Davos to sit in. He understands tides better than any man living. He watched the hand scurry away, then met Sansa's gaze. The world may drown again if we mismeasure these tides. It won't, she answered. We have learned to move together, not apart. Her small smile carved truth deeper than any proclamation. She turned, cloak rustling like eager parchment. Come, brother, council waits. Months later, spring unwrapped Westeros in hesitant shades of green. At Dragonstone the warm tides rolled in, bearing gull cries, and the brine-sweet promise of new beginnings. The castle still carried scars from the War of Beginnings, ramparts vitrified smooth by dragonfire, courtyards seamed with ice-glass veins, but the labyrinth of halls thrummed with voices in a dozen accents. Conclave delegates filled every chamber, from Corthine shade magistrates to Summer Islander lore singers, to Ironborn wave witches, whose eyes glittered like deep water. Jon stood on the basalt balcony once trod by Daenerys Targaryen, surveying an inner yard now ringed by temporary pavilions. Silken banners tugged in sea wind, a blue rose stitched inside a red sun, a white kraken coiling about a black hammer, a green glass candle crossed by frost-blue sword. None shared the same gods or customs, but all shared the memory of fire that had almost ended them. Footsteps echoed, Arya's light tread. She appeared from a shadowed archway, hair wind-tossed, leather jerkin simple yet travel-scarred. The Archmaesters have argued 3 days over whether glass candles can be extinguished by law, she said, smirking. One suggests dousing them in vinegar. Another says sealed lead coffers. None has proposed simply trusting people. Her tone left trust a bitter jest. They fear because they know too little, Jon replied. Knowledge once locked in Valyria spilled like molten blood. They think a lid will keep it from scalding again. Arya traced a finger over blackened stone railing. Lids crack when pressure builds. Better to vent slowly. She eyed him sidelong. You should tell them so. They like you, hero martyr, king who won't be king. The tease softened into seriousness. But no, they're afraid of you too. He smiled faintly. I'm afraid of me at times. Remedy that, she said, and slipped away, swallowed by stairwell gloom. There was truth. Since the sleeper's fall, dreams haunted Jon, dreams in which the beast writhed alive, cracked ribs weeping lava, whispering in tongues of grinding stone. In waking hours, he often sensed echoes of that power, coiled in the cold core of Longclaw. He had not spoken of it. But at night he walked the ramparts, blade bare, reading the stars for omens that refused poetry. Below, An ironborn priestess lit braziers around a fountain newly erected over the Dragonmont vent. Steam hissed through carved teeth, catching sunlight and rainbows. Children of delegates squealed, chasing mist. Jon watched them, felt weight ease. A bell clanged. Summons to main hall. He pivoted, descending the stair carved with writhing dragons. Torches lit the colonnade. Banners stirred in updraft. Inside, a round table of oak and weirwood dominated the hall. Jon's suggestion, built by carpenters of Storm's End and Pike side by side. Seats, etched with runes, stood equal height. Sansa presided today. Hair the color of harvest flame cascaded down shoulders cloaked in gray silk. At her signal, the gathering hushed. She rose, palms resting on polished grain. "Friends," she began, voice steady yet warm. "We convene to define the lines between healing and harm. Magic served both in equal measure during our recent trials. Let us decide how to honor one and prevent the other." Mento, High Archmaester Belgrave, robe striped for Ravencraft and metallurgy, cleared his throat. "Our order proposes licensing of all practitioners. Citadel chapters on alchemy, glass candle lore, greenseeing, and watersong will open to candidates who submit to testing and oath." Murmurs rippled. From Lyseni magisters who feared Citadel hegemony, from Dornish Strega wary of overseers, from Norvoshi sign priests who insisted only bells could sanction spells. Jon raised hand. Quiet fell. "We must remember why Valyria drowned," he said. "Not because knowledge existed, but because it was hoarded. I will not see new towers built of secret light. Your license risks replacing one tyranny with another. Colder, slower, but as fatal." A Braavosi mage with salt-gray beard nodded. "Then what safeguards Snow?" "The safeguard is many eyes," Jon answered. "Open the archives to any who pledge to share what they learn. No masters, no slaves. Teach children the principles, not only results. Fear breeds in ignorance." He glanced at Arya leaning in alcove, at Nymeria among Dorne's row, at Brienne behind Bran's chair. "Our world nearly broke because men worshipped power they did not understand, and women who sought dominion above dialogue. We must choose candor." A Lyseni murmured, "Candor kills as swiftly as knives." But his voice held curiosity, not scorn. Sansa spoke. "Then let us test candor. We propose each craft-present demonstration, a healing, a mechanism of terror, and the means to counter it. Knowledge displayed before the full conclave. Nothing withheld. It was bold, it risked chaos. But the hall nodded. Some with reluctance, others enthusiasm. Over the next fortnight, Dragonstone became symposium of wonders. Greenseers coaxed saplings to blossom beneath volcanic stone, showing how roots purify ash-poisoned soil. Alchemists revealed wildfire's silent weaknesses: saltwater vapor, powdered clay dust. Water singers shattered granite with harmonics, then sang counternotes to mend fissures. Magisters from Yeti unveiled paper lanterns that captured starlight, releasing it slowly to light roads. Jon observed, learned, advised. Yet still his dreams grew heavier. In the third week, he hiked Dragonmon Slope at midnight. Steam vents whistled. He found the cave mouth where he once sheltered during flight training. Inside, glowworms lit the vault in cosmic specks. He unsheathed Longclaw. Blade chimed, mirror to his unrest. At the cusp of shade the air rippled. A silhouette stepped forward, Marae's Velaryon. Not illusion. Hair burned away, skin pale as wax save red brand across throat. She wore naught but a simple shift. No weapon showed, but power knotted the space around her like invisible shares. Jon lifted sword. "I feared you dead. I hoped you free." She inclined head. Free of flesh perhaps, but not of fire. Her voice brittle, crystalline. "When Sleeper died, he drank my life, but flame refused me. I wandered seabed where vents speak tongues men cannot bear. She stepped closer. Air shimmered with heat. I come to finish what should have been birth, not battle. Jon pivoted blade to guard. The world chose life without dominion. Worlds seldom choose. They submit to stronger wills. Her eyes glowed ember dim. I offer alliance, Jon Snow. Not conquest. Guide me, temper me. Together we teach humankind to harness flame without being devoured. Now. He studied her, weighed sincerity. He felt echoes. Her grief for Iranian, her awe of the sleeper's grandeur, her hunger to shape destiny into beauty unmarred by petty thrones. Yet he also heard arrogance thrumming like furnace. You tried alliance once, he said. With fear's shadow looming, fear shattered your chain. I learned. She raised palms. They bore new scars shaped like coiling roots. Chain knowledge to compassion. Jon shook head. Knowledge has no chains. He sheathed Longclaw. Mary's frowned. It remains your habit to lower guard before final blow. She whispered. Mercy is your flaw. Fire blossomed in her palms, sizzling spheres of blue-white. But Jon had not lowered guard. Frost spilled from his fingertips, weaving shield of diamond mist that quenched flame instantly. Mary's gasped, stumbling. He stepped forward, gentle, yet inexorable. Mercy is not weakness, he said. It is strength grown so wild it can break swords. She stared, tears boiling on cheeks. Then show me. She collapsed to knees, palms steaming. Show me how to wield strength without devouring hope. He offered hand. After heartbeat she grasped it. Flames gone. In that clasp he felt heat and chill fuse, forming equilibrium. Conclave reconvened at dawn. Jon entered hall leading Mary's wrapped in rough-spun cloak. Shock rippled. Brienne's sword half drew. Davos' brow arched. Sansa's eyes hardened and softened into calculating calm. Jon spoke above the stir. Ghosts cannot be cast out by sword alone. She is witness to what we survived, and to what we must become. If we deny even our enemy's path to redemption, we risk birthing new foes. Arya had slipped behind Mary's, hand near dagger. She searched Jon's face, found unspoken plea, stepped back. Maester Belgrave cleared throat. Lady Mary's must stand trial for crimes. She submits, Jon replied. She nodded, head bowed. Trial convened in chamber, once lit by Dragonstone's black glass throne. Evidence recounted. The invasion, Storm's End glassed. King's Landing burned, the sleeper loosed. But also, her resistance to using shrouded ones against plow villages, her clemency to prisoners, her attempt to bridle titanic power, rather than annihilate. Debate raged sun to moonrise. Finally Bran wheeled forward. Justice should mend what vengeance shatters. He fixed Mary's with sea-glass gaze. Will you devote your life to healing the world your wrath scarred? She answered, voice a whisper that still carried, yes. Sentence. Exile within Westeros under guidance of Conclave, teaching flamecraft openly, banned from command or crown. A watch council of Northmen, Reachmen, and former Valyrian thralls would accompany her. She accepted without complaint. Some lords sputtered, others nodded. When an assembly adjourned, Dorne's delegate told Jon, mercy is a seed. See it watered. He promised nothing but hope. Months turned again. The conclave's edicts spread, to Old Town's halls, to stepstones, to summer isles. Schools of open craft blossomed in rebuilt Kiss, in old Volantis' shadow. Healers brewed wildfire derivatives to cauterize infection. Fishermen guided by watersong reopened silt-clogged deltas. Farmers in the Reach sang to saplings grown of greenseer stock, restoring orchards. Mary's dwelt in Dragonmon's shadow, forging sun kettles that warmed soil beyond normal seasons, feeding thousands. Under watchful eyes she laughed with children, wept at funerals, and bore the scorn of those widowed by her flame without flinch. The world watched, grudges thawed by inches. Jon flew seldom now. Ice Dragon nested in northern heights, hatching first clutch, smaller frostlings that scampered across glaciers. He visited, stroking cold ridges, feeling their hearts beat calm as mountain drums. He would not ride them. They were free to roam skies as they willed. Yet they circled over Winterfell often, guardians rather than tyrants. One mild summer eve, Jon walked Winterfell's outer parapet with Sansa. The moon hung amber, fields below alive with fireflies. Our realm is neither 7 kingdoms nor one, she mused. It's a mosaic of choice. Jon smiled. Mosaics are fragile. Only if mortar is weak. She tapped breastbone. The mortar is here, in every tale told around fires, in every hand reaching to lift a brick. We are stronger now because we know cracks. Then? They paused at Merlin's edge. Beyond lay forests humming with night. He rested forearms on stone. Do you ever fear the dragons will return? They're with us always, she answered, surprising him. But not as chains, as reminders. Fire teaches, the cost of fervor, the warmth of hope. Ice cools, anger, grief. We stand between, forging balance. Below, Bran rolled through Godswood, ravens swirling. Marys knelt by hot spring pool, steam hallowing her as she guided orphans in shaping glass baubles from volcanic sand, their laughter rising brighter than flame. Jon inhaled pine and ash and distant scent of rose. For the first time, he said, I feel the song of the world isn't ending. It's just beginning. Sansa took his hand. Stars wheeled overhead, silent, patient, marking seasons yet to dawn. The hard lessons of fire and ice had etched themselves into the bones of every living heart, but the scars did not promise ruin. They promised memory, and memory promised wisdom. Longclaw rested in its sheath at Jon's hip, neither glowing nor cold. It simply was, a blade of 2 worlds, waiting now not for war, but for whatever tomorrow asked. Beyond the wall, firelights flickered, new communities of wildlings and northerners forging common halls from pine dye. Across the sea, lantern fleets threaded fresh routes between islands birthed from the fallen peninsula, commerce growing where conquest once reigned. And in high northern skies, a great sweep of wings glimmered in moonlight, trailing frost that shimmered but did not sting. The world breathed, in, out, quiet and alive. The riverlands in midsummer smelled of life reclaimed, mud and mint and loam, a richness Jon Snow had nearly forgotten could exist after the tang of sulfur and frost that had clung to him for 2 years. All along the Green Fork, the flood silt left by spring thaw glimmered like ground pearls. Children danced barefoot at the water's edge, calves splashing, their laughter floating above the rush and warble of marsh birds. It struck Jon that such ordinary sounds now moved him more than any chorus of banners snapping or drums rolling before battle. He reined Ghost's Bane on the levee road and simply listened. 2 riders waited farther along. Sir Garland Tyrell, sun-touched and easy in his saddle despite a mail shirt patched from 6 campaigns, and Lady Nymeria Sand, the sash at her hips weighted by twin dirks with glassy pink blades. They had come to meet Jon before the first assembly of the New River Conclave, a gathering of small lords and free tenant spokesmen who hoped to turn the ravaged delta into the granary of 3 realms. Marys would arrive tomorrow from King's Landing, escorting a convoy of artisans bearing strange contraptions, bronze water screws and black glass condenser hoods that promised to distill brackish pools into sweet irrigation. Garland raised a hand in greeting. Thought we'd lost you, Snow. You stopped at every hamlet between River Run and Seaguard. I wanted to see the fields, Jon said, guiding his horse down the slope. Can a man fight to save a world he's never walked? Nymeria dismounted and knelt beside an irrigation trench, scooping water in her palm. Sweet, she pronounced, flicking drops on her tongue. Half a year ago this ditch ran salt as tears. Mary's sun kettles purged the soil faster than any maester tonic. Or so she says, Garland cautioned. We'll test the grain ourselves before I wager Highgarden stores on it." But his voice held admiration as much as caution. They rode through coppiced willows, birds flitting branch to branch. A miller worked a new forged water wheel, its paddles fashioned of mirror steel to resist rot. Mirrors caught sun, throwing tremulous light across the reeds. The man stopped his crank to shout thanks, "Sir Snow, Sir Tyrell," and then, seeing the martel colors on Nymeria's cloak, added an awkward salute. Long had the reach, and Dorne bickered over everything from border wells to wedding dowries. Now their heraldry rode side by side, and common folk scrambled to remember fresh courtesies. At midday they reached the encampment, hugging the confluence of the Tumblestone and the Green Fork. The camp looked more festival than muster. Bright tents with open sides shaded scroll tables, where scribes copied land deeds. Pavilions of striped silk held baskets of grafted saplings brought from Isle of Faces. A crude amphitheater of newly planed planks hosted ranga singers from Norvus whose deep voices demonstrated the harmonic frequencies that could break soft stone. A lesson for masons seeking to quarry foundation rock without blasting. Jon dismounted before the council marquee, its canvas dyed with stylized wolves and roses entwined. Inside, Bran sat in his living sled of roots, bare feet resting on cool turf. Maesters from Old Town and Korth stood around a map scarred by colored pins. Beside them, wildling hunters in seal furs and Summer Island spice planters argued in low voices about crop rotations. When Bran lifted his gaze, the room hushed. "You're late," he said, though a soft smile bent the corners of his mouth. "I was learning what we defend," Jon answered, clasping Bran's narrow shoulder. "Then you arrived exactly when I needed you." Bran gestured to the map. "We forged peace with parchment and sacrifice, but the land itself still bleeds. 2 weeks ago, a fissure opened near Fairmarket. Red smoke, shards of black crystal, water scalding fish alive. The villagers swear they saw a molten serpent writhing under the riverbed." "Another echo of Valyria?" Nymeria asked, stepping close. "Perhaps," Bran said. "Or perhaps the earth merely mimics the grief we poured into it. Either way, we must close it before summer storms spread poison south." Jon studied the river markers. "I'll take a task force tomorrow. Miners from the Vale, water singers to still the current, some of Marius's smith alchemists to cap the vent." Garland crossed arms. "And I'll bring Reach mudworkers. We know how to dam a flood without drowning folk downstream." Maester Bethany of the Citadel, stout, gray-haired, smelling faintly of camphor, tapped a notation on her ledger. 5 such fissures in 5 months, she said. "One at the Blackwater Rush, one near Maidenpool, one off the coast of Old Wick that boiled half the shoals dead. If they spread faster than we repair, the continent could fracture." Bran's eyes slipped white for an instant, pupils lost in weird dream. "The world heals," he murmured. "But scar tissue may blister. We must soothe, not seal alone." He refocused on Jon. "Bring seeds. Plant silvergrass around any capped vent. Its roots drink heavy metals and its stalks anchor soil." Jon nodded. "Done." Mary's Valerian arrived at dusk behind a caravan of ox carts draped in patchwork banners. Sigils of freed Valyrian thralls reclaimed from 1,000 cell brands. She rode a piebald palfrey with neither saddle nor bridle, guiding the beast by murmured Valyrian cadences that coaxed hooves to dance along the bank. Children ran after her cart train, marveling at glass cylinders that burbled green water over copper coils. She dismounted near the council fire, cloak trailing ash-gray silk. Jon met her with a soldier's nod. They had not spoken since Dragonstone beyond terse missives. Shipment manifests, engineering diagrams, lists of orphan shelters requiring funds. She looked thinner, her once gold hair now silver-white as welded steel, but her eyes gleamed clear. "I heard of the Fairmarket vent," she said without greeting. "My crew will build a pressure frame. Dragon glass webs clamped in bronze. It will hold until the roots bite." "Thank you," Jon replied. She tilted her head. "No thanks, Snow. This is my penance. Penance can be poison if you drink too much, he said, surprising himself. Consider letting it become purpose instead. Her mouth twitched, perhaps in gratitude, perhaps in hurt. Before she answered, a horn sounded from the southern watch. A rider galloped in, cloak torn. He slid from his lathered mare, clutching a sealed reed tube. Message from Storm's Break, he gasped. Pirates, fireships. Sacking the grain flotilla meant for Gulltown. They carry banners of the Burned Hand. The Burned Hand, scavenger fleet that had fled Valyria's collapse. Renegade alchemists brewing wildfire in hidden alcoves. John snatched the tube, unfurled smudged parchment. SOS coordinates near the coast. Report of 3 grain hulks ablaze. Captains captured. He turned to Garland and Nymeria. We sail tonight. Cut them off before they torch the whole delta. Mary stepped forward. I'm coming. John shook his head. They'd shoot you on sight. Half the rogues are ex-archons, which is why they'll hesitate when they see me. She met his eyes, steady. I'll take the tide skimmer. 1 dragon flame siphon on deck, non-lethal stun burst. We can disable their powder stores. Garland whistled softly. I've heard of those siphons. Shockwave of compressed dragon breath channeled through runes. Splinters hulls, but only scorches. Built as rescue cutters for slave ships, Mary said, voice flat. I built them, remember? John looked to Bran. The boy king's gaze was distant, but he nodded once. Trust must grow new roots. So they moved. Nymeria gathered a dozen sand skirmishers. Garland sent for reach bowmen skilled at silent night volleys. Maris skimmer, a sleek catamaran of copper-bound cedar. Rune plates along its prow. Slipped into the current an hour past moonrise. Sails black to the starless sky. Eddies of phosphorescence swirled in its wake like fallen constellations. On deck, John buckled Longclaw's baldric across a quilted gambeson, eschewing plate for speed. Mary's knelt by the siphon, adjusting valve screws. She spoke without looking up. You still carry the blade that cut the sleeper's heart. It's become quieter lately, John said. Either the world calms or I do. She tested a rune seal. Blades remember, but they fade into tools when wielders find peace. He studied her profile. Sharp as obsidian, etched by fatigue. And wielders? Some patch until they're more seam than cloth. She forced a ragged laugh. Enough introspection. We have pirates to catch. Benchang. Winds freshened. Around the first bend, river widened into a lagoon where the moon's reflection wavered on ripples. Flames flared ahead. A grain barge engulfed. Mast collapsed. Silhouettes of smaller galleys harried it. Sleek, oar-driven craft coated with tar. Wildfire jars at the ready. Skimmer crew muttered prayers. Mary signaled. The siphon roared, a blue-white jet that crossed the distance like a comet. It struck the nearest galley amidships. The hull shuddered, deck planks exploded outward, masts snapped. Pots of wildfire tumbled into water and fizzled harmlessly. Pirates screamed. Before their shock broke, Joan's longboat slid in behind them. Nymeria and her fighters vaulted rail, blades flashing in pallid firelight. The skirmish ended faster than a heartbeat. Half the marauders dropped their weapons at sight of Mary's silver gaze. The rest fell to anesthetic darts tipped with resin from Dorne's dreamwood. A second galley tried to ram. Garland's archers loosed arrows fletched with mirror steel. The shaft sliced through oars, snapping them like brittle twigs. Water filled the oar slots, and the boat slewed broadside into the reef. John boarded the burning grain hulk. He and 4 sailors hauled buckets in relay from the river, dousing smoldering sacks. When the last blaze died, he climbed to the quarterdeck, breath ragged. He saw a child crouched behind a grain crate, 8, maybe 9, soot streaking cheeks. She flinched when he knelt. I'm John, he said. You're safe. Her eyes, gray as cold stone, fixed on his sword. She whispered, Will the fire come back? John wiped ash from her brow. Not tonight. And tomorrow we'll plant new fields. Then, they ferried prisoners ashore, bound in manacles of rope, not iron, for they would stand trial rather than swing from mastheads. Marys faced them by torch glow. Some recognized her, spit curses. Others wept for lost glories of their shattered empire. She listened, silent, letting their rage break like waves against a cliff. At dawn, with survivors marched toward River Run's dungeons and grain hulks patched, Jon leaned over the skimmer rail, letting cool mist bathe his face. Marys joined him. "Thank you," he said simply. She shrugged. "If they'd exploded, the blast could have carried into Fairmarket. I only spared my own projects." He shook his head, smiling faintly. "If you keep pretending your heart's stone, people might stop seeing how it bleeds." Her lips parted, but words died. She watched sunlight rise over reed beds, turning river glass into gold. "Does yours still bleed, Wolf?" "Often," he admitted. "But I've learned to let it feed the roots." She nodded. Silence lingered, companionable. Fragile. Autumn found them at Old Town, where the Tower of the Hand, rebuilt as the beacon of balance, cast prismatic light across the Honeywine each night. Harmonics from glass candle lenses, tuned by water singers, greens ears and maesters, who finally accepted that magic and reason were twin rungs of the same ladder. The first cohort of open lore students filed through archways beneath carved runes stating knowledge is shared breath, not locked flame. Jon stood beside Sansa on the tower parapet, watching torches below swirl and welcome. The conclave had elected her high mediator, a role half counselor, half arbiter, charged to settle disputes when craft overstepped bounds. She wore a circlet of interwoven silver and root copper, a gift from Bran. "Nervous?" Jon asked. "Terrified." She chuckled. "But I find terror useful. It keeps hubris away." They descended to the hall, where Maester Bethany presented reports. Most fissures sealed, silvergrass thriving, pirate raids replaced by grain convoys escorted by mixed fleets. Trade caravans from Pentos brought saffron and iron. Wintertown's new foundry produced plowshares from reclaimed Valyrian bronze, metal once forged for war, now feeding fields. Yet rumor rose of a sickness in Assaria, fever sleeping beneath black glass shards, waking in those who harvested them without chance of cleansing. The council resolved to send healers trained in both incense and quinine bark. Nymeria volunteered, along with Grey Worm's Kiskari medics. Nights at Old Town came alive with debate. Jon found himself between rows of benches, listening while a young Taroshi artificer explained a pump that used residual dragon heat trapped in obsidian to lift well water for hillside vineyards. Marys corrected a rune orientation. The artificer blushed but thanked her. Nearby, Samwell Tarly, now High Curator of the Citadel's free stacks, demonstrated a rotating codex wheel that let scribes copy 4 scrolls at once. He greeted Jon with effusive joy, cheeks ruddy. "Remember when you were steward of the stores?" Sam laughed. "Now look, you steward the realm's conscience." Jon shook his head, but warmth spread through ribs. That night, on the beacon rooftop, Bran spoke to Jon alone beneath a sky veined with aurora glittering pale green. "The world widens," Bran said, voice almost lost in wind. "But new horizons always birth darker shadows. Will you watch them with me?" Jon glanced up at stars, imagining edges of maps shivering into undiscovered shores. "Always." Bran's ravens took flight, swirling constellation shards around them. A winter later, Jon returned north. Snow piled knee-deep on the King's Road, but Winterfell's courtyards thrummed with life. Stalls sold lanterns powered by fireflies coaxed from hibernation with soft whistles. Smithies hammered spades whose edges would never dull thanks to Valyrian mirror bonding. Apprentices traced runes in wax beside forges, testing ovens that baked bread with peat smoke captured in heat chambers. Jon marveled. In the Godswood he met Marys where steam curled above hot springs. She wore travel cloak dusted with rime, face flushed. "I'm leaving," she said before greetings. "Across the sunset sea. A joint expedition. Stark, Tyrell, Martell, Citadel." She caught his surprise. "There are tales," Summer islanders speak of green shores beyond endless water. If fissures east are healing, maybe the world mends faster if we understand what lies west. And if you find nothing? He asked. Her eyes shone with purpose. Then we map the nothing so others need not wonder. He considered, then nodded. I'll come partway, guide you past storms. No, she said gently. Your place is here. Shepherding roots. I need to walk a land where I am not Mary's the penitent, but merely a student. Then them see. They shared meal in hall with Rowan brandy, then parted at dawn. John watched her ride under towering firs, banners of the expedition streaming like bright fishtails. Ghost trotted at his side, muzzle frosted, eyes keen while distant drums beat farewell. Seasons turned. Conclaves met in Dornish atriums, in stone longhouses on Skagos, on floating barges moored off the Mander Delta. Each assembly planted another seed into the new weave of the world. John seldom drew Longclaw. Its edge served more to cut rope and harvest thistle. Yet he oiled the steel nightly, remembering. Years later, a raven arrived from the west, sails on the horizon, bright and whole. Mary's expedition had sighted vast forests of copper-leafed trees, sky bridges strung with iridescent moss, rivers whose fish glimmered like shards of moon. They named the land Dawnbreak. They spoke of no dragons, no doom, only horizons unscarred. John took the letter to the godswood, placed it at the root of the heart tree. Bran, older, frailer yet luminous, read it through the weirnet, long before ink dried. New branches, Bran said. New song, John answered. A hush settled. Snowflakes drifted, landing on Longclaw's pommel. For first time since he had been stabbed on a cold slab of black ice, John felt the weight of his duty ease into simple stewardship. Not heroism, not penance. Merely a man among many tending embers, keeping wolves fed, lending hand when storms pressed too close. Ghost padded from shadows, pressing cool nose to his palm. John scratched behind the ear, feeling the steady hum of life. Overhead a flight of frostlings rode the wind southward, curious, fearless. The moon's glow traced silver along their translucent wings. Below, in Winterfell's yard, children pointed and laughed. And the world, scarred, stubborn, miraculous, kept breathing.